you're interested. First come, first serve. We have food at this meeting.
David?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I will convene our meeting. Welcome to Board of Adjustments for October 23rd, 2019. The City of Tempe Board of Adjustment is authorized by the Arizona Revised Statutes and the City of Tempe Zoning Ordinance. Its function is to grant relief where a literal enforcement of the zoning ordinance would result in an unnecessary property hardship, to interpret provisions of the zoning ordinance, variances, and to hear appeals from any person or city official aggrieved, my eyes are playing tricks on me here. And to hear appeals from any person or city official aggrieved by the decision of a person responsible for the enforcement of the zoning ordinance, which would be a zoning administrator or hearing officer abatements. The board has the City of Tempe Community Development staff summary reports on the items being considered at this meeting and will use this report in their deliberations. All applicants and interested citizens, when your request is called or when you wish to address the board, please make sure you have filled out one of the citizens' request forms located on the table by the doors. Then step to the microphone and state your name and city of residence. Please submit the form to a staff member before you begin speaking at the microphone. I'm going to alter that slightly. See, over here there's a gentleman demonstrating for us. There are white cards. If you wish to make comment on one of the cases we're going to hear tonight, please fill one of those cards out and hand it to our member of city staff, and they'll filter it up to me. That way we have a record of everyone who's spoken. We will be able to grant each person 3 minutes to speak on a case. We cannot grant you more. That's just the way our process works. So again, tonight we have 3 cases on our agenda. We have altered the agenda slightly in that we will be hearing Generations Medical Center last in order to make an accommodation for the applicant. So our first case will be Storm Property, followed by Gutierrez Property. But our first item of business will be, we'll actually do roll call. So starting out my left, if you'd introduce yourself, please, board members.
Richard Watson. David Noggle.
Kevin Collins.
I am Chairman David Lyon.
Joshua Tracy.
Assistant Chairman James Frazee.
And Jack Confer.
Also with us tonight, we have from city staff, Steve Abrahamson. We have Brittany Nelson, Diana Kaminsky, Dalton Guerra, Ryan LeVake is with us, and also Dr. Miller joins us in the audience. Next item of business, folks, is consideration of meeting minutes for our July 24th, 2019 meeting. We have reviewed those minutes and found no corrections. May I hear a motion regarding the approval of those minutes, please?
Motion to approve.
Do I hear a second?
Second that.
Okay, motion to approve from Vice Chair Frazee and seconded by Board Member Collins. All those in favor by show of hands, please. Opposed, if any, and in abstinence. Okay, motion passes 6-0 with Board Member Tracy abstaining. All right, so with that, let's move on to our first item, Storm Property.
Oh.
We have somewhat recently changed our approach here. We like to invite our applicant to speak first, and then we have city staff come and reframe the issue afterwards.
I have a PowerPoint. It's going to play, hopefully.
All right. One thing we do ask of everyone, I'm sure you know, please state your name at the beginning so it's on the microphone.
My name is Daryl Steele. I am the applicant. Sorry. So according to the municipal code, landscaping means a combination of elements such as trees, shrubs, ground covers, which includes granite and any type of rock, vines and other organic and inorganic material for the express purpose of creating an attractive and pleasing environment. There are people out there who create artistic landscapes that have a mixture of both, you know, rock and grass, and they make mandalas and do all sorts of different things. There's absolutely nothing in the code except for where you park your car that says you cannot have grass, weed, stuff inside your rocks. This is not working. So in section 21-3.8, uncultivated plants, weeds, tall grass, uncultivated shrubs or growth, otherwise cannot be higher than 12 inches. The code specifically states that you can have weeds up to 12 inches. I like to think that the founding fathers had this idea in their heads that it's easier to pull a weed when it gets up to about a foot to make sure you get the roots out with it so they don't come back. There's also the fact that if you didn't allow any grass at all in rocks, you would have to be out there every single day with a pair of scissors snipping off every little tiny piece of grass in order to be in compliance, which would be physically impossible for anyone to ever do. Okay, so they had the forethought to say that you could have up to 12 inches. That way everyone had something they could aim for and make sure that they achieved, which makes sense. Okay, these are the photos that were submitted by Mr. Andreas in June. That is what I believe the mark on them is. Of my prior address. Then he submitted, oh no, these are my photos of the day of the hearing. So this is my grass as it appeared the day I was pulled in, and I was told that this grass around that little ring is out of compliance. It is less than half an inch, all of that grass. The bushes are clearly cultivated, the cactus is cultivated. All of that grass has been hit with a weed eater, is down to the rocks as far as I can. You can see my neighbor's car. That is part of the problem of me getting that grass any shorter, is if I try and run into those rocks with anything, it shoots rocks out to his car, and he just absolutely refuses to move it. I've asked him several times while I'm trying to get work out there done, and he can't. So there's only some point, and that clearly is less than a foot.
Can I ask you a question? Did you say
Yes, sir.
this photo was taken the day of the hearing?
The day of the hearing.
Okay.
And was available the day. These are the ones that Mr. Andreas submitted the day of the hearing. This is the day of the hearing, how my property looked.
And you say this is his photo, not yours?
His photo.
All right.
These were submitted with his, he put in a packet that had the 3 photos. It's on the agenda on the hearing officer's website. Here is a copy of the code compliance website for the city. Notice the ad up in the top right. Keep within the code. We'll zoom in on it. It does not work. It's hammock weather. Make sure you keep your lawn trim and weeds shorter than 12 inches. So it would appear that code compliance knows that weeds and grass and different things in the landscape are allowed to be up to 12 inches because they're advertising it on their website. This is the inspector report that Mr. Andreas submitted on 7/10/19. We're going to be looking at that first paragraph findings. He states in this report that he submitted that I had water jugs, furniture, and boxes and a whole bunch of stuff on my carport. However, the pictures that he took a week before show no water jugs, no boxes. There is that cabinet there where I keep my gardening, or used to keep my gardening materials. That cabinet was gone in the other pictures I showed from the date of the hearing because I removed it because I figured that might be what he was complaining about. But that was just a cabinet to hold the different gardening materials for my front yard. Okay, so he submitted a report that had a bunch of falsehoods in it. I don't know why. I really don't know, but it's clear to see there are no water jugs anywhere on my property. Okay. These are his photos he submitted in his report available on the hearing officer's website. On November 14th, Tempe Sergeant Laird, badge number 11586, removed Mr. Andreas from my property as he was trespassing. He came to my house, refused to leave. Cops came out, asked him to leave. I believe this might be part of the problem that I have with this inspector. So, at the time of the hearing office, I explained to the nice hearing officer lady that my understanding of the rules, whether you allowed at least up to a couple inches on grass and weeds and stuff, and Mr. Jeff Temlievich made a statement before her that the code does not allow any kind of growth over granite substrate, which is a falsehood. He is the supervisor for the inspector, and I have no clue because in the video he can be seen pulling up the code on his iPad before making a false statement before the hearing officer. So the reason of my appeal is that, one, the hearing officer did not view my house. She states it in the video. I have a copy of the video on my jump drive of the hearing officer if you guys want to watch the whole thing. She didn't view the property. She wasn't prepared to know the laws beforehand. Because she didn't know the laws beforehand, she asked Jeff, and he lied, or, yeah, right? Yeah. And the inspector submitted false report after false report that had incorrect information on it. And at the time, when I got this new information that they were going to try and change the codes on me, I asked for an extension because I wanted to comply if that's what the rules were going to be. I wanted to make sure I could do my best to take care of what the city wanted. She refused an extension. In fact, I've gone through the hearing officers ever since she took over. She has never approved an extension. In the close to 2 years that she's been running it since she took over for the guy, she's seen somewhere in the neighborhood of 24 cases. Every single one she's found on the city side. She has never found for a owner of a house, ever, which is kind of disturbing when you go through and you watch the videos. It would appear that the hearing officer has decided that her job is rubber stamping whatever the city inspectors put in front of her, which is a problem.
Okay, is that the meat of your presentation then?
That's the meat of my presentation.
All right, let's ask you some questions then. Board members, what questions do you have for our applicant? Vice Chair Frazee.
So a question in regards to, I guess what you're describing is that the weeds and the growth is your planned landscaping for that property. That's the way you planned it and intended it?
That's the way it exists.
All right, other questions? Board Member Collins?
I could not tell when you showed the pictures up there. What was the date of the pictures you showed?
So those are 6/3/19 with the inspector's report. And the others, I believe, are 8/30, the date of the 8/20/2019.
20. So the pictures we have on file that show the whole yard with a lot of grass and the gravel is dated 6/30.
These are the pictures that Mr. Andreas submitted with his on the date of the hearing. Is this?
That's what the date of the hearing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So these are the photos that he submitted 3 months. So I got the first notice in May or April, and I immediately went out and hired somebody to go out and pull all the weeds, which is why in these photos, none of those weeds are over a foot, because I actually had somebody come out and take care of it. So I was really surprised when I got the second notice, when I hired someone to come out and take care of it, which is why I went and got rid of that cabinet, which is why I was surprised to get hauled into a hearing officer. Because, you know, I made sure to take care of all the painting, because you can see there was a fire at the house, and I had to paint that whole corner of the house. I made sure to the day of the hearing that all the painting was done. He testified, I think, that he saw people working on painting that when he was taking those pictures from the 8/20. So I really don't know what I should be expected to do. I'm trying to get it to grow out enough that I can pull it out with the roots. But since they won't let me get to the 12 inches because they're complaining about half an inch, I really don't know what I'm expected to do. My major complaint is that they're changing the rules on me.
Thank you.
All right. So let me defer to the rest of the board first. Any more questions, board members?
Well, yeah, just to follow up. So since the initial complaint, so you're saying you have done work to clean up property since the first complaints taken
Since
place?
it came in like March, of course.
Yeah.
Like he's supposed to have submitted the pictures from March when he went out and did the first inspection. I can't find them on the hearing officer's website. They're not part of his initial packet, which is what these photos were in. The first set of photos are from his hearing officer packet, so there's 2 different packets online to look at. So it's one of those things where As soon as I got the notice, I made sure to have people come out and take care of it, and it shows clearly that work was done. And then when I got a second notice, I went even farther to do the best I could to comply as physically possible.
Thank you.
Any more? Board Member Watson?
Yes. Do you have any current pictures?
I do not.
Something you've taken within the last week?
I do not.
Okay.
My understanding was that this was only to cover whether or not she improperly applied the code and had nothing to do with the current state of the property.
I generally take the opportunity to do a drive-by, but do not have the chance, so thank you.
To be honest with you, it probably looks more like that. The June pictures than the August pictures.
All right. Well, Mr. Steele, I'll tell you that the state of the property at the time of the hearing does make some difference, and that's part of what we need to try and establish is what state the property was in at the time of the hearing, had you taken care of the problem. And the photo that you've shown us, yeah, which I think you're attempting to scroll back to,
Yeah.
the first photo you showed us, I think is the one of most interest to me.
This picture?
That one.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's very difficult for us to see this image on that screen, but it looks to me like I don't actually see grass in that photo. I'm assuming there is some to be seen.
The circle that's centered on the photo, for about 3 feet in front of it, there's grass that's about yay high. And it circles out to the bird of paradise and makes kind of a figure 8 shape from where the lemon tree used to be in the bird of paradise.
Oh, I think I see it now. Oh, so it is very much like what's here. It's just shorter in the 603 photos, which I'm pointing to, as if you can see. Okay, so you had shortened the grass but not removed it.
Yes, I shortened it to under the 12 inches required by the code.
Okay. Well, we're going to have some more discussion about what those code items mean a little later, I think.
I shortened it to as short as I could get it.
Okay. Okay, I think I see. Any more
I-
questions for our applicant?
I went around and sprayed 3 different brands of the anti-vegetation stuff to try and keep anything from coming back. And it still grows, which is why it looks like it does right now, because I work a full-time job 7 days a week and I haven't had a chance to hire somebody out to look at it again. But as far as I know, when I left the house, there weren't any weeds over 12 inches. It was within compliance, the front yard.
Okay, well, I hope well, I need to tell you that I take some issue with your interpretation of the code, and that is part of what's going on here. The code doesn't say you can have anything you want as long as it's shorter than 12 inches. The code also doesn't say you can have any combination of all those planting materials in any arrangement. Those materials can be acceptable. It does not mean they always will be acceptable. And weeds shorter than 12 inches are not always acceptable. If my neighbor had a yard of 11.5-inch weeds, nothing but, I'm sure he'd still be found out of compliance. But we'll discuss that a little more. You'll have a chance to come back up and address things that you've heard. We'll ask more questions, mull some of those things over. Let's turn now to our city staff and get the other side of things. Mr. Guerra, would you join us, please?
Good evening, Chairman Lyon, members of the board. My name is Dalton Guerra. I'm a Planner 1 with the City of Tempe Planning Division. I'm just going to give you a brief background, a little bit of history on this case. I just want to let you know any questions on the details of the abatement should be directed to the staff of the Code Compliance Division. The storm property is located south of West University Drive and east of South Priest Drive on Lot 118 of the Western Village 3 subdivision within the R16 zoning district. On August 20th, 2019, the hearing officer approved the abatement for public nuisance items for the storm property. And on September 3rd, 2019, the appellant, Darrell Steele, submitted an application to appeal the hearing officer's decision to approve that abatement. I'm here for any questions about the appeal process if you have any.
Well, my questions are going to be directed more towards
Okay.
towards Jeff. Board members, you have questions for Mr. Guerra? Board Member Watson?
Have any of the neighbors complained
Staff has not received any public input since the appeal was filed.
prior to that?
I'm not sure. I would direct that question to code compliance.
All right, then I think we'll thank you. Can we actually call Jeff to come to the podium and explain a little more? Would you be willing to join us, please? Yeah, Mr. Reyes, I think I'd like to hear from, as well as perhaps if you would give us a lead-in, Jeff, and then
Absolutely. Chairman Lyon, board members, my name is Jeff Tamielewicz. I'm the Code Compliance Administrator for the City of Tempe. I will let Inspector Lara Reyes sort of introduce the project, tell the history of the project. But if you'd like to ask me some questions, I'd be happy to answer. I understand there's a question with respect to the definition of tall weeds. At this point, I will sort of reiterate what you had said, Chairman Lyon. The way our code reads is that, anything over 12 inches is really referred to the actual grass that stands in a yard. So if a yard has grass and grass is exceeding 12 inches in height, then it's a violation by code. But if it's in an area that has decomposed granite or other landscape material, then those areas would be considered areas of sort of uncontrolled growth and a slum-like appearance, if you will, according to nuisance code 21.3b8. And that's what the inspector issued the violation based on.
okay, any questions, board members? All right, then we'll thank you.
All right.
Mr. Lara Reyes?
Yes, good evening, board members. My name is Andres Lara Reyes. I work for the City of Tempe Code Compliance Division. I have been a co-inspector for over 10 years. I visited the single-family residential property 1105 East Elnoray Street this morning and determined that it's still in violation of City Code 21.3b8 for deteriorated landscape, grass and weeds over the gravel in the front yard, and there's also over high grass and weeds in the backyard. As of today, City records and Maricopa County records both identify the property owner as the Storm Family Trust. The previous tenant, Darrell Steele, and the Storm Family Trust have been made aware of the violations on site and given time to correct all violations. During the case, the appellant, Mr. Steele, conversed with several City Tempe officials. He told both the City of Tempe Code Compliance Administrator and the Community Development Director he is not an owner of 1105 East Elnoray Street. He is no longer a tenant at 1105 East Elnoray Street, and he's not part of the Storm Family Trust. The case before you this evening, case CE 191569, was generated by complaints we received from the public. On March 6, 2019, conducted initial inspection. A correction notice was mailed to Susan Storm in care of Darrell Steele. On April 4, 2019, follow-up inspection was confirmed over high grass and weeds in the backyard and grass and weeds in the gravel in the front, also junk and debris and peeling paint. At that time, a correction notice was mailed for all violations to Susan Storm in care of Darrell Steele. On May 8, 2019, inspector confirmed grass and weeds and gravel, junk and debris, and peeling paint remained. Final notice was mailed to Susan Storm in care of Darrell Steele. On May 23, 2019, inspection found no changes made to the property. On June 3, 2019, also conducted another inspection and found no changes made to the property. This time, a first citation was mailed to Darrell Steele. On June 4, 2019, approximately 9:46 a.m., a copy of the citation was posted to the front door. On June 27, 2019, I was given directions to dismiss the citation due to Darrell Steele stating he has no ownership or responsibility of the property. On June 11, 2019, notice of intent to abate was posted and mailed to the Storm Family Trust. On August 20, 2019, an inspection was conducted on that morning of the hearing officer and was found in violation for grass and weeds over the gravel in the front yard. At that time, the hearing officer approved an 180 open abatement.
Do you know if anyone?
This individual case has been open for 231 days as of today. And over the last 5 years, we have had 11 total cases resulting in 68 inspections at this property. The city has provided well above normal amount of time for compliance with this case, as well offering all our assistance program. We are hoping the decision made by the hearing officer is supported by this board. Today, we are able to move forward with our process.
Okay. Board members, questions?
Yes, sir.
In your opinion, is the only current code violation the weeds? Has the paint and the other debris been taken care of?
The other items have been taken care of, just the deteriorated landscape, correct.
All right, so I'd like to ask you about the backyard. I don't recall seeing any photos of the backyard, but you've listed that as an item that was out of conformance. What can you tell us about the condition of the backyard? Was it a major factor?
Yeah, the reason for that is because at the time of the hearing officer submittal, the backyard was in compliance. But it was part of the original first correction notice, first and second correction notice. It included the backyard. But at the time, before the submittal to the hearing officer, the backyard was in compliance.
Okay. Okay. Board members, any other questions? Board member, Vice Chair Frazee?
Just a question in regards to the hearing officer minutes. So there's the comment made by Mr. Steele in regards to the fact that grass is allowed in gravel, and then there's the reply that grass and weeds, no matter what height, are allowed in the gravel. Is that a code? What is the specific code in regards to
As
that?
Mr. Jeff Tamilevis explained earlier, the code, if you have grass landscape,
Yes, okay.
right, the 12 inches apply.
Okay, seeing no other questions, well, thank you, Mr. Lares.
Thank you.
All right, so before we come back to you,
If we've had a request that everyone speak up and project. There's,
all right,
Thank you. I appreciate it.
all right, keep letting me know if I'm too quiet. All right, so now we'll move to our public comment section. If you wish to make comment on this case, you can do so. We can provide you 3 minutes. I believe we still have white cards over there if you haven't had a chance already. I don't presently have any cards for someone wanting to speak on this case. Is there anyone with us that wishes to make comment on this case? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public comment section. So, Mr. Steele, if you want to come back to the stand and address what you've heard, and we may ask you some more questions.
If they really wanted to make it so that you're not allowed to have any kind of grass over rock, it really should say that in the code. The code lumps together all landscaping, regardless of type, because that was a cut and copy paste in my PowerPoint directly from the Tempe code with a citing source so that you can go straight out to the Tempe code at the municipal library's website and look straight at it. Okay. And like I showed you, they're advertising on the code compliance's website that weeds can be up to 12 inches in their nice little banner ads. Okay. So that's, what is a city or a civilian, one of us, supposed to think when the code says this, doesn't say anything about rock or over rock, and that they're advertising on their site that it's allowed to be up to this height to make sure people are in compliance. And I think it's pretty obvious from the photos that were submitted at the hearing that I went well above and beyond and did my best to get rid of that grass as humanly possible. which is why I think the code is written the way it is because they understand that we're all humans. There's only so much you can do in rock, and things going to happen. The grass is going to come back, but as long as you're making an effort, that's what counts, is what I understood. I think it's extremely obvious I made an effort. And if they wanted to ding me for what I did, I should have been offered an extension like I asked for at the time of the hearing. But for some reason, this new hearing officer does not like to offer extensions, does not like to side on the half of the city, the public. And I really did my best. I don't know what else I could be expected to do. In regards to what Mr. Reyes said, the last 5 years of my grandmother's life, she had deteriorating health. So I'm not surprised that they got several reports in that time frame. My grandfather lost his mind and went into a home. My grandmother was by herself and disabled and in her 90s. At the time that I took over, maintaining the property, she went into a home. She died the year before this went through. There's no water at the house because when the pipes were damaged. So I'm not living there. Okay. My mom runs the trust. My mom lives in a completely different state and asked me to handle this for her because she is in charge of the estate. The government owns the house. Okay. There was a reverse mortgage. The government owns the house. The government has lost the paperwork and refuses to take the house back. And the city tax people won't put the name into someone else, but the government's been paying the taxes for the last 4 years. So I'm literally out here doing my best to maintain the property as best I can when I don't live there. And I come around and I check it and I hire companies to work on it. And when you don't live at a place and you hire a company, sometimes they let you down and you have to fire that company and hire a new one. Things happen. I'm doing my best. I swear it.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Steele? Well, I'll just tell you, Mr. Steele, that I've had notices show up at my door because I've had some weeds and things. I definitely sympathize. It happens. The part that's a little difficult for me, and I think we need to be clear about, is when we get those notices, we got to take them seriously and realize we're being told something's not going right. I don't know exactly how many of these came through you. You say that period of several years you weren't even in the house, but you did receive at least a couple of these notices. Is that not correct?
And I took immediate, I can call forth 2 people who can testify that I hired them to work and do that work at the time I received the notices. And if we can ever get the pictures from when he got the complaint in March versus the ones he submitted in June, I guarantee you they're light and day. Like the weeds when I got the notice in March were literally this tall. I apologize. Like literally this tall. And the photos he submitted in June, they're under 12 inches because I had somebody coming out there regularly to take care of it. And I don't think they've been above 12 inches since I received the notices and got somebody out there.
Okay. Well, again, I'll say I sympathize. I had a time where I was out of state for a while because of some family challenges, and I came back to huge weeds. I'm lucky I didn't get written up myself. But again, we do need to be clear here. 12 inches is not sort of the level at which we say everything's good until then. There are some other factors there that the landscape needs to look maintained. So
the ½ inch that I had at the time of the hearing office?
it's not a matter of a ruler. It's a matter of keeping the property in a manner that looks well maintained. And so
I believe your comment was that in these pictures, you couldn't even see that grass existed. It was so well maintained.
what I said was I couldn't see the grass in that image. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have a discussion amongst ourselves, and we'll see what board members think, and then we'll have a motion on the case. Thank you. All right. Board members, what are your thoughts?
I'd like to make one statement.
Okay.
So Based on the information provided, it appears that obviously it's been over 200 and some days since the initial issue with this started. We get these cases a lot, and we have pushed back and allowed for additional time for residents to take care of it beyond what the hearing officer provided. I personally think in this case that there was more than sufficient time to take care of the issue. I have gravel in my yard and I have grass in the yard. There are ways to keep it down, weeds and grass down from the yard. I don't have it there for art, so I don't think it's a large issue to maintain. And as mentioned before, the code doesn't allow 12 inches of weeds or grass in gravel or non-grass yards.
It doesn't say anywhere in there anything about that.
So we can't accept any debate at this point. Thank you. Board members, other thoughts?
I guess what I'm saying is that the work has taken place, and we're now down to just the grass and the weeds and the gravel, if I'm correct on what the current challenge is.
Okay. Other thoughts? Fair enough. All right, other thoughts? Board Member Watson.
Yeah, I'm concerned about the objectivity of the process. The homeowner's done improvements. I get the battle with the grass weeds. I didn't see anything that was that obtuse in the landscaping. Yes, it's not the standard that I would apply for myself, but I don't see anything that obtuse. And he initially requested an extension, and that was denied. So I don't think that we're objectively looking at this.
All right. Well, don't be shy here. Tell us where you stand.
Mr.
Board Member
Chairman,
Confer.
I won't be opposed to voting to grant the abatement with a stay of an adequate amount of time to cure the one thing that may still be in violation. So I would not be opposed to granting the abatement with a stay of 1 month, 30 days, 1 week to cure the violation the inspector saw this morning. Thank you.
All right. Any other thoughts? All right, I'll jump in and I'll say that that's how I feel. We have the abatement process in order to take care of problems, but if the problem can be taken care of with 30-day stay or, we might say 2 months, but I think 1 month would be the appropriate amount of time. If it really was a matter of a misunderstanding, I think we've been pretty clear now, and him going through the whole process, as uncomfortable as it is, I think we understand that we've got to get the grass out of the rocks. I think 30 days would be appropriate, and after which time, if it's not taken care of, the abatement kicks in as usual. Vice Chair Frazee.
So based on those comments, the 180 days would start 30 days from today, if that was to be what we agreed on.
If that's what we agreed on, yes. All right, so I don't see anyone else piping up opinions, so I will hear a motion if no one else wants to voice their opinions.
Make a motion to,
Board Member Confer.
sorry.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion to grant the abatement with a 30-day stay so that the one item that was reported by the inspector that was still in violation from this morning can be removed.
All right, so am I to understand correctly that in 30 days, if the property is found in compliance, the abatement will not commence?
That's the justification for the motion, yes.
Okay, do I hear a second? Mr. Abrams. You're right. You're right. So that's not an option that we have. So the options that we have are to grant the appeal or to deny the appeal, and the appeal is to overturn the hearing officer's decision. So we've jumped a step there. All right.
What's the suggested motion, staff?
One of her decisions was to deny my extension. So if you approve my appeal, Mr. Steele. How should be made either to approve the appeal, that's overturning the hearing officer's decision, or deny the appeal, that's his opinion.
I withdraw my motion.
All right. So let's have a different motion.
I have a motion.
Board Member Noggle.
I move to deny the appeal of the hearing officer's decision.
Okay. Do I hear a second? Okay. Seeing none, I will hear a different motion. There's only one other choice. Vice Chair Frazee.
I guess my motion would be to deny the appeal, but to extend the abatement process for 30 days before it starts. If that's an acceptable motion. You can't.
Yeah, we don't have that option in front of us. We only have the option to deny or
I'm trying to clarify what's happened in the past.
we.
I'm sorry, my microphone. There are two options. And you should start in the affirmative.
Actually, Chairman Lyon, in the past, we have granted the appeal with the or we've granted it in a case where we stipulated a time frame for that correction to be made or the abatement would go into effect. And I think that's what the original motion was suggesting.
Mr. Abramson.
Make a motion to approve the appeal. You can have a negative vote, and or you can approve it with conditions.
So is that what we've done in the past?
I'm sorry, deny it with conditions.
So help me out. You've called us on our P's and Q's. How was it that we framed this issue in the past?
In this particular case, in the discussion I'm hearing, I'm sorry for the confusion. You can make a motion to approve the appeal, and if you, make a motion to deny the appeal, and if it is approved, or if you wish to, you can add conditions to it. Am I confusing the matter even more?
I will give you a moment, but I do want you to wait, please. So
Make a motion to deny the appeal, and you can approve that with conditions. You can add conditions to that denial.
So what would be the condition we're looking for? You know what we're trying to do here. You're calling us on a P's and Q's.
A 30-day stay is the condition. You can deny the appeal with a 30-day stay.
All right.
Sorry.
Okay. Now, Mr. Steele, this is extremely irregular. We never do this, so you are a very special person. What is it you wish to say?
My appeal was that my grievance was that she should have approved my extension. So by approving my appeal that she should have approved my extension, you could invalidate that portion of her decision by approving my appeal.
Okay. Well, what we have in front of us is the abatement. We don't have the appeal for an extension in front of us. We have the appeal of the abatement. Is that not so?
The hearing officer's decision on my extension.
We are here to consider the hearing officer's decision on the abatement, correct? Not the hearing officer's decision on the extension?
No, it's the abatement.
All right. Okay. So I think we understand what you're looking for, and I think we're actually talking about granting that. But let's let's leave well enough alone. Okay, so now, the motion that I think we are looking for is a denial with a 30-day stay. Is that how you wish that to be phrased?
That's the best way to phrase it, yes.
All right.
That has
Mr. Steele, you got to let it go. All right. So, do I hear a motion?
I make a motion.
All right. Board Member
My
Knopf.
motion is to deny the appeal with a 30-day
30-day stay that would allow for an additional 30 days for Mr. Steele to self-abate the property.
That's my motion.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right. So a yes vote will have, if we collectively vote yes, this will have the effect of staying the abatement for 30 days. All those in favor by show of hands, please. Opposed, if any? Okay, the motion passes 6-1. So you have 30 days. All right. This is extremely irregular. Could you tell me briefly what those two items are?
In a previous abatement to my property, they failed to file proper paperwork for the charging of the property. So there's currently a lien against the property that's never been properly followed through on. And I was told that I could get a refund if you found that the hearing officer acted inappropriately for the $120 that I had to submit to even have my appeal.
Okay, so can we do this? Can you meet with Mr. Steele afterwards to straighten out the issues of how that's to be handled, how those issues should be raised? Because I know that's not in our agenda.
In that I am the staff that's conducting this meeting, if he wishes to wait until the end of the hearing, I'd be happy to speak with him, or I could speak with him tomorrow.
That work?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm afraid I don't have any power to help you. He's the guy who can give you some answers on that.
I'm pretty sure the note that I submitted requesting my appeal said that I was trying to appeal her decision not to was included in my appeal. So it sounds like you guys just approved my appeal, but stated you denied.
Mr. Chairman, this item is not on the agenda. We can't talk about it right now. Hasn't been given any public notice.
Okay, so here's what I advise you to do. We've broken form quite a bit to try and appease you here, and this is going to be the last I'm going to say about it. You've got 30 days to clean up the property, and you can talk to Mr. Abramson about all the other outlying issues that you want to resolve still, and he'll help get that on track. We have to, by state law, follow procedures that we can't get into issues that have the public hasn't been notified and all those things. Okay, so we'll thank you. All right, so let's move on now to the Gutierrez property. Do we have our applicant here?
Okay, so first of all, I just want to say that I've had a lot of issues with this property. Originally, it was purchased and was lived in for some time with by my dad. He owns multiple properties, and however, he had gotten very ill, and I'm the only person that has been there to take care of him. He was diagnosed with dementia, and subsequent to me actually taking care of him, it became evident that he was not able to take care of anything, and so I had to basically step in and take care of all of the financial responsibilities. After dealing with that for over a year and even issues with him, and in Texas where he lives half of the time, there was actually a fire at this property in 2017. So there was nobody living at that property at that time. And there was very, very difficult time getting things done because my father had had a heart attack and there was a lot of things done. I had to spend most of my time in Texas because there was no one else to take care of him. Can you hear me?
If you spoke up a little, that
I'm
would help.
sorry. And after me taking care of him, I had started to realize that there was something not quite right with myself either. And going to doctors, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor that I just barely was able to have surgery on September the 8th. So I'm barely probably 6 weeks out of surgery for that. I have had to do a lot of work on this property based on the fire itself, with insurance, with neighbors complaining, with having to relocate within that year when we were no longer able to live in that property 5 different times. And it's just been completely so difficult. But we have done the best that we can. We have made the front property, which is what to my knowledge, was the main complaint that the neighbors had. There was dirt all in the beginning. Now there's grass, and there are still some issues, I understand. But I have been so sick and unable to do a large amount. There were things and there was finances, and I do have receipts now of a large amount of money that have been spent to buy materials to actually make a shed that is proper, so that there will not be any further complaints by neighbors. So can I give these to you? One of the main issues that I had too, which caused a lot of finances, is financial hardship. Is at one point we have had like 3 or 4 trash cans that we have purchased or rented to get rid of a lot of the stuff that was in the backyard, which was, like I said in the beginning, I was just trying to focus on the front yard because that's what everyone saw. But then it became, I guess, told to me that I needed to also deal with the stuff that in the backyard. And so we filled up like 2 trash bins, and then we had another one brought. I have an email here that I received from I guess it's June 27th, 2019, from the company that I contracted on behalf of my father for these trash bins to try to get rid of some of the stuff that was the insurance had told us we needed to keep so that we could get reimbursed for our losses. And she basically said that she was reaching out due to the city of Tempe contacting us as to a container is in violation, so they want us to pick up the container. Can you please call me? So I did call her, and I asked her what the complaint exactly was and who she actually talked to, and she wasn't able to tell me. And I told her, well, then what do we need? What do we do? And I said, the container is not filled. It was filled at that time with a lot of recyclable cardboard that was going to actually be put or taken out of it to be put in the city Temple recycling, so I could use the rest of it to put larger items in it that needed to be disposed of. And they said that they just could not keep it there, even though that the contract wasn't, I had 30 days or 27 days, and that they were going to have to pick it up. Otherwise, they would risk the city coming and impounding it themselves. So I do have the email and the receipt for that. That trash can had been there for a little bit of time, and we were slowly working on it. But at that time, I was already currently diagnosed. And so I was very restricted in what I could actually physically do. And we had to take FML leave that was unpaid. So at that point, we were living off of our savings. So we were not able to fully, completely put a lot of finances into doing it. And we were doing most of the labor ourselves. The reason that I believe that this happened is because one of the neighbors was continuing to call on a daily basis. One of the neighbors has told me that he's friends with somebody in code compliance and that he could basically get anything done that he wants to get done. And so that's what he has actually admitted to me. So I have the receipts for the stuff that I purchased to actually make the shed. I have the email and the receipts for the trash cans that we actually have used to get rid of a lot of the stuff right now. And I also have pictures of some, like I said, I just had the surgery on September the 9th. I am still restricted until pretty much December for doing really a lot of heavy lifting. But I have a child that has been helping me, and my husband, like I said, he's on FMLA, so I've been supervising the labor to build the shed to get the things that need to be contained properly. So at this point, I would ask, because of my medical issues and because of there was even an issue with where the notices were being sent in my father's name, but the property had been transferred multiple times because he had dementia. Then I was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And so I was going to have to undergo surgery. And if I passed away, the house would have to go into probate. So everything was sold to a trust. And so that it could be protected in the event that him or I perished, because I do have a daughter that's 27 years old that has epilepsy, that has only known that house since she was 2 years old. So I just ask that you guys consider the fact that I am trying to move. It may not be as fast as code compliance would like or as fast as my neighbors would like, but I am in a very, very difficult situation medically and financially, and I'm doing the best that I can do, and that is really all that I can do. If this abatement proceeds, it is going to put a financial burden on the trust, which it was created specifically for my special needs daughter, and to make sure that she is taken care of if something should happen to me. So that is basically my case at this point. I do have pictures that I can show of, and like I said, receipts of about $700-800 worth of materials that has been purchased recently since, like I said, and we're trying to build the shed to remedy the rest of the situation.
We don't have any kind of overhead capabilities here, do we?
We do. I've never used it before.
Is that what that is?
Yes, please.
These are the receipts. You have receipts or pictures?
You know how to use it?
These are the pictures of.
Yeah, I would like to see both.
This is the email that I received.
I don't need to spend a lot of time on receipts personally, but she took the effort to bring them in. We can look at them. More interested in the photos.
Yep. Oh, here.
And if it's necessary, I do have medical documentation to show that I did have brain surgery on September 9th. I don't have pictures of what the property looked like before, but I did have 3 temporary tents put up in the back.
We have it.
And 2 of which were removed. And basically that was the contents of those were cataloged and sent to the insurance company so that they could actually pay for the loss. They're not that great quality pictures. So the scaffolding in the corner has all of the lumber that I have purchased. There was an additional scaffolding kind of over in that far left corner on this picture down at the bottom. And that has been removed, and all of the items that were there were discarded. There is a structure, a small, like, I guess it was originally meant for like to cover a car. We have some items in there that the insurance had wanted us to process, but there was a lot of difficulty with the insurance and mortgage and whatnot, because during the time that the property was during the fire, the mortgage was transferred And so that was a big disaster too. So there was a lot of time in between when they were sending the checks and when stuff can actually be done. And that was one of the reasons why it was essential for us to put the tents out there so that we could preserve the items that the insurance had not yet paid for. And since we already have, we took down those other tents. And so basically at the whatever's left in there was the last tent of things that I had in the backyard that just needed to be protected, some of my dad's items. And so that's one of the reasons we're trying to build a shelter that would be able to enclose the rest of the things that are in that temporary, garage type structure. And you'll see right there on this side, those are the holes for the footings that we've already started for that structure. Are there other pictures? That's just basically, before there was all just basically dirt. We've coordinated off where the structure is going to go, and then the other portion we have put sod to keep the dirt down and to just make it look, more like a yard.
When did you put that sod in?
The sod had been put down about a month ago. About a month ago. Can you turn it around the other way? No, like vertical. There we go. Okay, so that's the picture of the corner where we had a lot of metal and other things. That's basically, we have basically tilled that area. I'm going to build another smaller structure just for the machines that we have a lot of outdoor machines, lawnmowers and stuff like that. They told us that apparently those also have to be, they can't be just outside. Everything has to be enclosed in some sort of thing. So I know that the stuff needs to be cleaned up. It's just very difficult that, I try to focus on the front yard because that's what most people see. We do not live in an HOA. And the fact that the neighbors are specifically like looking over neighbors, there are other people in the neighborhood that also have structures similar to mine. I'm being told that it can't even be there at all. So that's the reason why we're just gonna, in order to avoid any more calls to the city, I just need to get this taken care of so that it can just be, there won't be any reason for them to call anymore, for anyone to complain. And like I said, I understand that it has taken me a long period of time, but it's just been due to medical issues, and there's nobody but me, and I have a lot of responsibility on my shoulders, and I can only do what I can do if I'm well, and I was not well, and I'm getting there slowly, but I need time to get these things rectified. Thank you.
Okay, board members, questions for our
That basically is just a receipt from the Scott's Waste Services for one of the dumpsters that I got. That shows how much I paid, and that's the one that was not even filled and was taken off of the property basically illegally, just because one of the code compliance's officers called them and said that it was there illegally, which it was not. At that same time when that container was on my driveway, one of the neighbors also had another trash container on his driveway, and he did not have his removed, and no one called. I specifically went to go talk to him, and I asked him, have you had any issues? And he said, no, actually, the reason I got the trash can was because I got a notice. There was some construction going on, and they had put some stuff outside there, and they got a notice that they needed to properly dispose of it. So they got a trash can and they put it on their driveway, just like I did. So one person is told that they can put it on the driveway, and then I have mine on my driveway, which is actually, his was more visible from the street because that was on River, and I live on Pegasus, which is a cul-de-sac, and mine apparently was not okay, and they took it, or they made it be taken because the people did not want to worry or to have it confiscated. That was basically what I was told. I asked Jack Schofield, who is the code compliance officer that I have been dealing with, if he was the one who had called, and he told me that he was not the one that had called, that he was aware that the phone call had been made, but that it was made by his supervisor. And I'm not sure exactly who his supervisor is. I have not to date had any, anything with any other code compliance other than Jack Schofield.
Okay. I think we've got the gist there.
Can you speak up a little bit? I'm hard.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
I was saying
I'm
I
the
think
one
we
who's
have
hard
the
of hearing. I'm
gist of
sorry.
your presentation. Thank you. Board Member Confer.
Thank you. Just one quick question. What was the result of the civil ticket that was written back
You
in
speak up,
August?
sir.
The
I'm sorry.
civil Arizona traffic ticket and complaint made out back in August 8th of 2019. I was curious what the result of that was.
So at that time, I had just barely, what date was that again, sir?
Ticket was written on August 8th of 2019.
Is it August 8th? Okay. And that was for the, well, they basically found that I needed to pay the fine. But at that time, I did not have the paperwork to show that I was, well, at the time that the ticket was actually given, I was not even the owner of the property. I owned the property for 3 days and it was transferred to trust. The only reason I became the owner of the property is because of my father's dementia. That property has always been my father's for his grandchild that has special needs.
What was the final disposition of this? Did anything come of it? Did anything come of this ticket?
Did anything come of what?
The ticket that was written.
I basically had to, they reduced it to $200 and I had to make payment arrangements.
Thank you.
And only because I did not have the proper paperwork to show that.
Perfect. I'm sorry. Maybe I should have explained that better.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So she paid the reduced $200 amount. Other questions?
But I have to say too, the judge in that case, she didn't really want to kind of go and talk about the issue with regards to trash can being taken and the fact that I was being told by code compliance that somebody or one of my neighbors was calling consistently every single day. And at that time, I just had thrown myself hand in the air because I was so stressed out. The tumor that I had was actually fueled by cortisol. So I had to remove myself from everything.
All right. Well, let's try and take the stress level down here now. I think we've got the gist of the material facts. All right. Let's hear from city staff, and then we'll come back to you in a little bit, please, Ms. Gutierrez.
I'm going to ask if you speak up, please.
Good evening, Chairman Lyon, members of the board. My name is Dalton Guerra, Planner 1 with the City of Tempe Planning Division. The Gutierrez property is located north of East Guadalupe Road and west of South Price Road on Lot 170 of the Tempe Royal Palms Unit 16 subdivision within the R17 Single Family Residential District. On September 3rd, 2019, the hearing officer approved the abatement for public nuisance items for the Gutierrez property. On September 16th, 2019, the appellant, Jessica Gutierrez, submitted an application to appeal the hearing officer's decision to approve that abatement. And on September 23rd, 2019, the appellant was found guilty in violation of City Code Section 21-3B1 by City of Tempe Municipal Court. Once again, I'm here to answer any questions about the appeal process. If there are none, I will invite Jeff Tamulevich to come up and answer any questions about the details of the abatement.
I don't think we have any questions, Mr. Guerra.
Thank you.
Can we ask Mr. Tamulevich? Can you come to the podium, please, and shed a little light?
Again, Chairman Lyon, board members, my name is Jeff Tamulevich. I'm the Code Compliance Administrator for the City of Tempe. Better. Again, if it's okay, I'd like to have Jack Schofield, who is the inspector on that case. Again, I'd like to have, if possible, Jack Schofield present the case, but I'm obviously here for any questions that you might have. Is there anything that you have at this moment for me?
It looks like no. Let's hear from Mr. Schofield.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, board members. Jack Schofield, code inspector with the city of Tempe, been in the code inspections for a little over 11 years now. On April 23rd of this year, we received a complaint concerning the property about a large amount of trash, debris, and household items being stored on the exterior of the property, being in the front yard, driveway, on the side yard, within enclosing a trailer, and scattered throughout the rear yard. On April 23rd, I did do that inspection and did find that there was a significant amount of, like I said, trash, debris, household items being stored in the backyard. Was almost full. The back patio was full. The front yard had a lot in there, and there was a trailer on the side of the front yard that was also full of items. At that time, I did mail out notification to the listed property owner, which at that time was Guillermo Morales, which is Ms. Gutierrez's father. April 30th, I received a phone call from Ms. Gutierrez. At that time, she requested an extension on it to bring the property into compliance. I did offer a 2-week extension to show some progress on it, and she also asked for assistance. At that time, I provided her with the HEART brochure, which is ran through Tempe Fire Care 7, which gives assistance to citizens in need. I also gave her information concerning the voluntary abatement process. She, at that time, refused the voluntary abatement process, and she said that she would be contacting Care 7 to try for the HEART program. On May 21st, I inspected the property and found minimal progress on the property, so I did mail out a final notification to the property owner. At that time, it was still Mr. Morales. On June 4th, I was at the property. There was progress made on there, and I met with Ms. Gutierrez, and I granted another 2-week extension to show more progress onto the property. I'm sorry. On June 25th, I went out to the property. I did not see any progress whatsoever. I met Mr. Gutierrez was at the property again. I gave her an additional 2-week extension, said that I could not give her any more after that. There would be a citation issued. June 26th, I received another complaint about the property, so I stopped by the property, and there was a unregistered vehicle in the driveway. At that time, I went back to the office and mailed out an updated final notification to Ms. Gutierrez for all the trash and debris on the exterior of the property and for the vehicle parked, the unregistered vehicle parked on the property. July 10th of this year, I inspected the property, and I did not see any progress whatsoever. I did take photos at that time. I was going to issue a citation. Ms. Gutierrez came out. I informed her that I'd be issuing a citation at that time. When I went back to the office to check Maricopa County Assessor's Office, I did see that there was a change of ownership, which was changed from Mr. Guillermo, which was now Ms. Jessica Gutierrez was now the listed owner, according to Maricopa County Assessor's Office and Maricopa Recorder's Office. At that time, I did mail out a final one to Ms. Gutierrez, listing her as the property owner for all the violations. July 24th, I inspected it and found no progress again at the property. At that time, there was a civil citation issued to Ms. Gutierrez. On August 15th, I checked the court system and found that I did have Ms. Gutierrez had failed to appear for the court hearing. However, she did come in later that day, and we did have a court hearing set for September 23rd. On September 23rd, we had a court hearing with Tempe City Court, at which time Ms. Gutierrez was found responsible for the trash and debris covered exterior areas of the property. The truck had been brought into compliance. That was a non-issue at that time. Throughout the entire case, both owners at the time, Mr. Guillermo Morales and Ms. Jessica Gutierrez, had been made aware of the violations, had been received notifications. There was given several extensions as well to Ms. Gutierrez. There was also an offer to give her a direction to get some assistance, which at my understanding, I have not heard anything back from Care 7, so I do not believe that she has made contact with him, but I cannot say that for sure at this time. At As of today at 2 o'clock, I did check Maricopa County Assessor's Office, and I do have a copy of it here that shows Ms. Gutierrez is still being the listed owner. The recorded documents through Maricopa Recorder's Office, the last recorded deed is also still with Ms. Gutierrez, listing her as the owner. I do have photos today that shows of the property. I did go by and visit the property today. The property is now, the backyard is deteriorating worse than whenever the first photos, which the members have in the packet there from the hearing officer. There's additional items in the back, and I will give those to Steve here in just a minute for you gentlemen can take a look at it. This case has been open for 183 days as of today. Since 2010, we've had 10 total cases resulting in 61 inspections at the property. 7 of these cases have been opened for trash and debris as well for the same violations. The city has provided well above the normal amount of time in compliance with this case, as well as offering our assistance programs to the property owner. That we are hoping the decision made by the hearing officer is supported by this board today, and we were able to move forward with our process. And I do have photos of the property today. Ms. Gutierrez is correct. This property was, the case was complaint driven from residents in the area. And we do receive complaints on an ongoing basis concerning the property. This is the trailer that is stored with all kind of items that is in the front yard, on the front side yard. This is tools that she's storing out on the driveway as well. This is looking in towards the backyard. There's trash, debris, lumber, scrap metal, tires, all sorts of different miscellaneous items. This is around the front door. There's some storage of items out in the front as well. This is in the rear yard. It's just some of the stuff that she has stored out in the rear yard. This is the structure she was referring to. It is deteriorated in such a way. It's just got tarps that are thrown on it now trying to cover stuff, and those are also deteriorating. The back patio is completely filled with items as well, along with other items scattered throughout the yard. This is a closer view of the rear patio. That's the view of the structure that she has off of Guadalupe Road right there. This is another view of the backyard showing the trash, debris, and items that are scattered throughout. And that is the other side of the yard, which is also showing the patio as well. And another close-up of the patio. This is just a copy of the water bill that's showing Ms. Gutierrez is at the property and has control of the property. This is the last deed that is recorded with the Maricopa County Recorder's Office, showing Ms. Gutierrez as the owner of the property. And this is from the Maricopa County Assessor's Office as well, showing Ms. Gutierrez listed as the property owner.
All right. Questions for Mr. Schofield? Vice Chair Frazee.
So based on what you're seeing today and then when the abatement was approved in September, has any work been completed on the property?
No, sir. There seems to be more items scattered throughout the back.
Other questions? Board Member Watson.
You said that there were 10 cases opened for what period of time?
I do not have that information with me. I'm sorry. Over the last 10, it's been 2010. And we've had 10 cases. I'm not sure the length that they were open, if that's what you're requesting.
Yeah, I'd kind of like to be able to time box it a little bit better.
Yeah, I'm not sure how long those cases were. I don't have that information in front of me. I apologize.
All right, just so we get it out there, can you give us a very brief description of what an abatement period consists of?
I'm sorry, sir?
Can you give us a very brief description of what abatement consists of?
Abatement will consist of removing any of the items on the outside, unless it's like customary stuff that's in the rear yard, you know, like outdoor furniture, patio furniture, yard tools that are not in excess, stuff like that would not be touched.
Okay. Any other questions? Well, thank you.
Thank you, members.
All right, folks, we now come to our public comment section. I have one card here. If anyone else wishes, we'll come back to you. We haven't forgotten. If anyone else wishes to comment on this case, you can do so. Please fill out a card, get it to staff. We'll give you 3 minutes to speak. The card I have here is for Gerald Kristich. Please, if you come to the microphone, we need you to state your name into the microphone just for the record, and we'll give you 3 minutes. At that 3 minutes, I'll ask you to wrap it up as politely as I can.
My name's Gerald Kristich. I reside at 2108 East Pegasus Drive, which is just due north of the property in question. I've resided at this property since 1997. And this property, I don't know the exact number of years that she's resided there, but I know for the fact the last 5 years that this property has been in continuous disrepair over the 5 years. And basically, I would like you to ask me any questions that you might have regarding what I've witnessed over the last 5 years, what's going on in this property.
All right. Fair enough. Board members, any questions? He says he can tell us about the timeline of things. All right, I'll bite. Okay. So we've heard that there were 10 cases, and I'm sorry, I just want to have this straight. You said you lived at your property since
1997.
97, and you've, would you say that the property has been in a state of disrepair that entire time?
Pretty much.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Mr. Christus? All right, well, thank you. All right, anyone else wishing to speak on this case? Seeing none, I will close the public comment section, and we'll invite Ms. Gutierrez, come back up to the stand, please, and you can respond to what you've heard.
I'm not sure exactly what the date was that Mr. Schofield said that he actually pulled the warranty. But I have documents here in front of me that show that on March 29th, which is actually before I think the first citation was issued, that this house was transferred over to the Three Seas Trust. And so, which would not make me have to be dealing with it at that time. That was the reason why it was done, because I was not in good physical health to do it. But they never really did look into it. Yes, we have been living in that house. I have special needs children, and there have been multiple issues whereas their neighbors, the specific neighbor has called because I have had issues with when he had people living there. One of the girls that lived there had done something very inappropriate with my special needs daughter. And from that point, there was police involved, and he was consistently always, I tried to just communicate with him, to try to talk with him, because I didn't think there was anything insidious, but he didn't want to deal with it. And from that point on, he would, whenever he got a chance, because he was upset that I called the police because he didn't want to have a one-to-one communication, from that point on, he continued to call the city on me anytime he could. And so I've been dealing with this for many, many years. My dad has had a degrade of dementia for about 8 years now, not until 2015 did I have to actually come in and do everything.
Okay, well, Ms. Gutierrez,
And
I'll
like
tell
I said,
you
I have
that
the warranty deeds here.
I feel some sympathy for you. Certainly seen cancer take its toll in my own family. I know that that can be a very difficult thing.
Can you speak up a little bit, sir?
Here's the thing. To my view, I can express sympathy for you, and I think this board in general is fairly willing to grant some leniency, generally speaking, but we have to really consider the material facts of the case. And what we really need to talk about, I think, is should you be cleaning this up, and why have you not? And I understand that you're saying that you haven't been able to because of very serious medical conditions and other issues.
Which has since been
But those
remedied.
do not, unfortunately, give you a reprieve from a responsibility to the rest of the neighborhood. If you have a choice between taking care of your health and taking care of the house, I think you do well to take care of your house. You do well to take care of your health and neglect the house. But the consequence of that will be at some point someone's going to say, okay, we're going to come and take care of the house and you're going to have to pay us to do it. So if you have anything else to say regarding the abatement directly.
Well, yes, with regards to the abatement, like I said, this house was transferred into a special needs trust. So if this abatement proceeds, they have submitted a bill for almost $5,000 that's going to go against, they're going to put a lien on the house, which means ultimately somebody is going to have to pay for that, which would mean that special needs trust, was created specifically for my daughter. And she does not have the income, and it's protected for her, and that somehow somebody's going to have to pay for it. She doesn't even make $5,000 in a year. So who's going to pay for that? We don't have the finances which to do it. If I did, trust me, it would have been cleaned up, because I would rather have done that. But like you said, at some point, you have to take care of your own medical. And that's what I did, because I was not winning with neighbors that are calling and calling and calling when I have given my phone number. And there's only one or two of them that are doing it. The rest of them are live and let live. They have their own issues in their family, and they know to just leave people alone. This is not an HOH neighborhood. I understand the front yard, and I tried to remedy and deal with that first, because like I said, that is what everyone saw. I am now on the road to recovery. You have receipts showing that I have forked out almost $700-800, and that's just the receipts I could provide. We purchased a lot of stuff cheaper through Craigslist and whatnot in order to get this structure built so that everything can be put together. I just need more time. And the only reason I need more time is because I literally had surgery on September 9th.
All right, so let's cut to the chase on that. How much time?
I would say 30 days. I already have the hose built. I have the material there, and I'm just waiting for the beginning of the month to have a little bit more funds to maybe hire some actual physical labor. Because to this point, it's been just us, because we have no funds to be able to actually to pay for the labor. The mortgage company, just to give you, with regards to all of this stuff, the mortgage company that transferred the mortgage is still holding a $50,000 check for repairs that were done on the interior of the house that my father has not been reimbursed for. And that has caused a very, very big financial hardship too.
All right. Vice Chair Frazee.
A comment in regards to the community assistance
I'm
program.
going to need you guys to speak up, because I'm almost deaf.
The community assistance program that was referenced, the HEART program,
Yes.
are you taking account of that?
Yes, sir. I wanted to address that too. 2 weeks prior to Jack Schofield telling me that one of the neighbors, Cindy Patrick, who lives on the corner, I had told her what was going on. She knew of the brain tumor and everything. And I said, I don't even know what to do. It's stressing me out. She came to my house specifically, and she gave me that same information. I was cried on her shoulders and everything. And then I just got it together and I called them. I told them my whole situation then. I told them that I was medically unable. I told them everything. And they basically said, well, don't you have any friends or family to help? And I said, if I had friends or family to help, I would have called them, but I called you. And then a little while later, he gave it to me, and I had already done that. I had already gotten that pushback, and we were doing our own cleanup ourselves. So at that point, yes, I needed help, but I needed more help after they took that trash can because I didn't have the finances or the another $430 at that point. My husband had already taken FML leave because I was due. My surgery, my brain surgery was scheduled since January, but I have an autoimmune disease, and they kept having to postpone it because I was not well enough to have surgery. And so that's basically what kind of continued to postpone it, along with all of the other issues financially and otherwise with the insurance, the loss, the fire that we are still dealing with. And most of it has had to been put aside because my father was very, very ill and I had to leave. I was gone in that 1 year that we were not living in that house. I was in Texas for 6 months out of that year.
So I have two questions for you.
Yes, sir.
Number one, when did your father purchase the house?
The house was purchased in I cannot remember, sir. I'm sorry. My memory is, it's been about, trying to think.
5 years, 10 years, 15, 20?
I believe it was 86.
Second question, you said you need 30 days.
I'm sorry?
Second question, you said you need 30 days.
Yes.
Okay, do you really think 30 days is a realistic time frame? And given the entire circumstance that you have in front of you,
Oh,
the pictures
like I
that
said,
we've
well,
seen, let me finish. Is 30 days an adequate amount of time, or is it really a function of, say, at 90 days is more realistic for you to get the work done? Because again, I don't want to do a 30-day, I'm reluctant to do a 30-day extension when I see how much work you have in front of you, and then you come back 30 days from now saying, guess what, I didn't get it done.
Right. I guess I would defer to you on that. I'm only saying that if that's all I can get, because that's what I had been told before, code compliance wise, then that's what I would be willing to take rather than go through that expense of somebody putting a $5,000 lien on the house. But if I'm allowed to get more, yes, that would be more beneficial. Right now, tomorrow, there's a court case that's pending with my father from a lady that I hired to take care of him. She stole over $35,000. That trial is due to start tomorrow, and I haven't been given clearance to fly, so I can't even be there for that trial, but thankfully the deposition has already been given.
I believe you mentioned early in your statement that you would not be medically cleared until December.
Say that one more time.
You said in your early statement about your medical clearance wouldn't be until December for you to be
full on physical. Like right now, I have some limitations with regards to what I can lift and bending down because they put a plug in my head that with any type of pressure, but even a really hard sneeze. But I just went to the doctor a week ago and I did my MRI that's supposed to clear me, and I should be getting the call this week to make sure that the tumor was completely removed, because I'm not past everything yet, but from what I've been told from the doctor, the tumor was removed all that he could see, and it's just a matter of whether or not they see anything more on the MRI. Then yes, potentially I may have to go back into surgery, but it has already been biopsied, and the worry was because this tumor was growing out of character, and it made me very, very sick. I lost over 150 pounds in 8 months. And, but they basically said that it is not cancerous. So that I'm just grateful for.
That's nice. Thank you.
Questions for Ms. Gutierrez? Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
That's the public comment section. So I'm afraid you've missed your opportunity at this point, Mr. Steele. All right. So board members, thoughts? If you do not wish to express thoughts or opinions, we can go straight to a motion, but somebody's got to do something, so don't be shy. Board Member Confer?
I was looking at Board Member Watts to see what his thoughts were.
Well, so my thought was, based on what we've done with previous cases where we've granted extensions and a realistic time for them to make the cleanup, I can think of the last case that came here, 3 months ago, that was very similar to this. That given the circumstances, I would be in favor of a 120-day extension from today. So that would be 4 months, given that her medical clearance is sometime between now and December to do the work. I don't think 30 days is realistic, given the circumstance that was stated. So that would be my recommendation, would be to approve the abatement with a 120-day stay.
All right, other thoughts? I'll jump in if everyone else is going to be shy. I'm going to put you on the spot one of these days. So I will say I could get behind a 30-day stay. I think you may well be right that 120 days may be what they would require to get to it. But my feeling is there's been an awful lot of notice, and I feel awkward because we've heard about her medical conditions and the many challenges she has in her life, and I know that those can be a real strain. I've been through that, but I don't know that I can sit here and say, well, that's a very sad story, so we're going to give you a huge stay, where somebody else who maybe just didn't get to it, we might say, no pity for you because, you could have. So I don't feel like I can get behind granting a huge amount of leniency. I feel like 30 days is a good show that, hey, if you can get out there and take care of this property, which has been in the family possession for many years, then that's a little bit of leniency, but this has just really got to come to an end. It's got to be taken care of. And the side steps about who owns the property and a lot of unfortunate family circumstances notwithstanding, look, it's got to get done. So I would support a motion for 30 days. Other thoughts? Board Member Tracy.
Yeah, I think, I certainly feel for Ms. Gutierrez, and there's obviously, this is a very long case. There's a lot of circumstances to it. I think there's probably some happy medium between a 30-day and 120-day, in my opinion, that would likely make sense here, because why I feel for the applicant or the appellant, I don't know what the appellant,
sure.
Appellant, how about that? I also feel for the neighbors that have been dealing with this for multiple years as well. So, that's what leads me to believe there's probably somewhere in here between 30 days and 120 days that makes sense.
Okay, so you're between the softie and the hard nose. All right, other opinions?
The board
Member Comfort.
Can somebody remind me the process on this? So it's a 180-day abatement, correct? That's what's being appealed.
Yes.
So that wouldn't happen for 180 days. Is that the way that works? I don't recall how.
Let's just get clarification. Mr. Abramson, can you please explain the 180-day abatement?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Lyon, members of the board. The way this works is there's actually an abatement that was authorized by the hearing officer. In addition to that abatement, there's a 180-day open period in which, should there be a reoffense, if you will, if it goes south, the property goes south again, then code can go out and abate it without having to go back to the hearing officer.
What is the time frame that normally happens when an abatement is issued? And
from the time of the decision, the clock starts.
So are you asking how long does it take the contractor to clean the property? I think that'll be case by case, but they're going to get going pretty quickly, I imagine.
It's within a 14-day period.
14 days.
After, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, both.
All right. Other thoughts, or should we put a motion forward?
I actually have a question for Mr.
Board Member Watson.
I'm sorry, I have a question for Mr. Tomovich. Do you personally know the gentleman who came up?
No, I've never met him
Tap you
before
on
in
the
my
shoulder,
life.
that's why I wondered why.
Excuse me?
I saw him tap you on the shoulder as he walked by. Do you know him personally?
Yeah, no, I spoke to him on the phone earlier tonight. That was it. That was the first time I've ever communicated with this individual.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
All right. I'm not seeing a lot of aggressive opinion asserting here. So somebody put forward a motion, please. Oh. Let's have a motion.
I'll put out a motion that we deny the appeal with a 120-day stay.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
All right. We have a motion to deny the appeal with a 120-day stay from Board Member Watson, seconded by Board Member Confer. All those in favor by show of hands, please. And opposed, if any? All right, motion passes 5-2. All right. So, folks, that brings us to our last case, Generations Medical Center. Do we now have our applicant with us? If you come to the podium, please, sir.
Good evening. Good evening, board members. Am I speaking loud enough into the microphone? I know that's been a problem so far.
I'm okay.
Okay. Mr. Abramson, if you could get that. Well, he's loading that. My name is Sean Lake, 1744 South Val Vista, here on behalf of Generations Medical, the owner of Lot 1, that is the applicant or the property owner for this application for the variance request. Before I go into my presentation while we're loading it, let me just kind of briefly, this case was filed in April. We held a neighborhood meeting in May. Mr. Josh Bender, the attorney representing the mosque, also attended that neighborhood meeting, as did a lot of people. This has been a long-standing dispute between a couple of property owners, adjacent property owners, over how to deal or address a parking issue. And this is kind of the next level. As I'll go through my presentation, there was some discussions about resolving it through agreement. That ultimately ended up in litigation. In that litigation, representatives of the mosque said, just go get a variance. So that's why we're here, to get a variance. We met with staff, and staff was very good and suggested that a variance would be an option to resolve this issue. And we're hopeful that we can obtain a variance so that this can all end and be over and done, and we can all turn the page on an ugly past and move forward, hopefully as good neighbors. That is our goal here today. We were a little frustrated with the 117-page brief that we were provided 2 hours ago, but we'll try to work our way through it. Here we go. Thank you. Generations Medical is a medical office building that was built in 1984. Many of you are probably familiar with it. It is located on the northeast corner of Guadalupe and McClintock. Many of you have probably been to that doctor's office. It's been around for quite a long time. Here's kind of a lay of the land for that northeast corner. So Lot 1 is my client's property. That is outlined in blue. It is owned by Moonshadow's property, or Moonshadow Properties, which is the Generations Medical Group. Currently, within Lot 1, the blue line, we have 158 parking spaces, and that is confirmed by a survey, a registered survey that's been provided to the city and is probably part of your packet. On lot 2, we call the south property owner, Nelson Ranch, Anasazi. We've worked with them as far as sharing parking over the many years. They're the ones that submitted a letter of opposition, but then we worked with them and they withdrew that letter of opposition and are, my understanding, are not here but support the application. Lot 3 is a vacant parcel owned by we'll say Mahid. Is that a fair? Lot 3 is owned by the mosque. Masjid. I apologize. I'm sorry. By masjid, we'll refer to that as the mosque, if that is fair. Lot 3 is owned by the mosque, as well as the corner parcel, which used to be a bank, which is now the mosque as well. Across the street, again, as many of you are familiar, is the Holy Spirit Catholic Church. So a parcel history or a timeline of what has occurred out here. Back in 1976, the Catholic Church, as I identified on that map, was developed. In 81, the Federal Savings and Loan was developed, which is now the mosque that currently, where they go to pray at that location. In 1984, the Thomas Davis Medical Center, which is now the Generations Medical Center, was developed. And then in 2000, the Catholic Church applied for a parking variance, very similar to what we have here, and they received a variance. Then in 2002, the property owner of Lot 1 worked with the mosque because they realized there was really a symbiotic relationship here. You have the Generations Medical Office building where you have people coming to this office Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 is generally when people come. And the mosque is typically on Friday or the weekends, and also on religious, I believe, lunar holidays tied to the lunar calendar. Later on, the owner or my client worked with the Holy Spirit Church and also had a revocable shared parking agreement with the Catholic Church. And so it kind of worked together where we worked with the mosque and had a handshake agreement where, hey, when you guys have a lot of people here, you can park on our property. When we have a lot of people, we can park on your property. And that's been in place for a lot of years. It's an agreement that's worked very well, and we hope to continue. We think it has worked very well for a lot of years, and we think with those uses, hopefully will continue for many, many, many years to come. Then on 2006, my client, Moonshadow Properties, purchased Generations Medical Office Building from Dr. Linnerson. And then in 2011, Dr. Linnerson sold Lot 3 to the mosque. So they have two parcels kind of separated, but the Lot 3 is undeveloped pad with around 50 parking spaces that surround that belong to the mosque, and the mosque can use those for their future development. We tried to work with the representative of the mosques to try to acquire some spaces or acquire a license, a binding type of situation, and that didn't work out. That led to litigation. And the court ultimately ruled that we didn't need the parking spaces and there was not an implied easement, and sent us back to now this stage of where we're at today to try option 2, which is to try to resolve this issue with a variance, similar to the Catholic Church. As I indicated, the Moonshadow Properties was in a lawsuit with the mosque to try to address this parking issue. They believed that they had rights to some of those parking spaces. Ultimately, the court determined that they didn't. And during that process and talking with the mosque representatives and the court, we were just encouraged, go get a variance. And so quite frankly, that's why we're here. We're option 2 to seek a variance to resolve this issue. There we go. During that time, representatives of the mosque testified or represented at trial, and you can see in the findings of Fact 85, they indicated that we had plenty of parking on our own. And also the court found in their finding that there is that makes it overwhelmingly clear that the parking available on Lot 1, which is our client's property, is and has always been sufficient for Lot 1's needs. So why do I bring this up? Lot 1 is required by code to have 190 spaces, 198 spaces. We have 158. We have operated on this site for many, many, many years fine. We've never had a parking problem. So we thought a variance would be a good way because operationally we don't have an issue. Operationally on a day-to-day basis, there are no concerns. And so we thought, given that there was another variance in the area granted for a parking variance, we thought, let's try this avenue to just put this to rest and move on. And so that's why the application for the variance was submitted. So we submitted an application, that's a typo, it's a 20% reduction, but we submitted an application for 158 spaces for the 29,000 square foot medical office building. So during the process, again, we reiterated, the court told us, you have plenty of parking on your property. You don't need to go work with the mosque or to get any parking spaces from the mosque. You have plenty, and that was a finding of the court. We held a neighborhood meeting on May 21st where we invited the neighbors, as required with a variance, to come to an open house to talk about this parking variance. And we had quite a few neighbors attend, including the mosque, representatives of the mosque. And every one of them said, we've never seen a problem with parking out here. We've never had a problem. Now, on Easter Sunday, sure, we have a lot of parking, and the Catholic Church overflows off of their parking lot into ours, which is great. On Christmas, sometimes there's a problem when those type of things, but it's very rare. As for a day-to-day basis, the neighbors indicated, no, there is not a problem. People are not bleeding off into the street or into our neighborhoods. It functions and operates fine. So to accompany our application for a variance, we hired CivTech to do a parking analysis on an every hourly basis that's in your staff report that I'm sure you've reviewed, that discusses when the peak hours, the low hours, and parking. And CivTech concluded there is more than sufficient parking on this Lot 1 to meet the needs of the Generation Medical Building. We don't need the parking on the mosque property. We don't need anybody else's parking. We have more than sufficient on our property to accommodate our needs. CivTech used the ITE standard, which is the International Traffic Engineers Handbook, to determine what is the standard. And that standard says you need about 156 parking spaces, 156, 157 for this size of a medical office building. We provide 159. So we also performed historical surveys of aerial photos going back since this place has been in operation for many, many years. We went back and looked at aerial photos. Has there ever been a parking problem? And we couldn't find one. Staff also did their own analysis, visiting the site, looking at aerial photographs, as well as doing their own investigation, and they've determined that there is sufficient parking on this Lot 1 for Generations Medical, and they recommend approval of the variance. And then I also, as of last night, Nelson Anasazi, the South property owner, withdrew their opposition and supports our request for a variance. So, as we all know, staff has done an excellent job outlining the criteria that are necessary for the findings that need to be made for a variance. They're outlined by state law, and staff has reviewed those and had presented in their staff report the reasons why they believe that this property meets those tests. And we support that, and I don't want to go into detail about that, but we do believe that there are special circumstances as to staff with this irregularly shaped piece of property. And quite honestly, the way that the properties all function together, it kind of creates a unique situation. We believe that granting this variance will not deprive other property owners the privilege of enjoying their property. Quite honestly, when the mosque wants to develop their property, this variance will not diminish the ability of them to develop that vacant lot. They have parking, I believe about 50 spaces on that lot that will be used to satisfy their needs. And so our request is not asking for any diminishing of any parking on any other lot. Our parking analysis that was performed by CivTech, further, their findings were no, Our study is based upon only the parking on lot 1, not on anybody else's lot, and we find that there is sufficient parking. They need to find that there's not a special privilege. And as I showed you, the Catholic Church was granted a very similar variance in this area, which is good because the way our relationship with the various different property owners in the area is very symbiotic. When we need parking, they don't. When they need parking, we don't. And so it has kind of functioned and worked very, very well for a lot of years. As well as a self-imposed, there is not a self-imposed hardship. We've tried other paths. When they acquired this property, they thought they had a right to all the parking within that parking field. It was later they tried to determine that it wasn't, so that they then went back to try to acquire it. They tried a lawsuit. The court ultimately ruled, you have no rights to any of those parking spaces, which left them shy, which left us to where we're at. So operationally, we've been working together to try to focus our parking for our uses just on our lot 1. So, long and short, we see really there's 2 issues here. There's the functionality of parking and what is needed for this office building to function and operate. And I think history has proven over the many, many years that there is sufficient parking on lot 1 to accommodate us because we've never had a problem. The neighbors in the area supported it. The parking study, we even had the property manager of the Generations Medical go out and do their own parking analysis, which is in your report. And they've determined that there is not a parking problem on this site. So operationally, there's not a parking problem. Where we run into an issue is the paper parking. What is required by code? The code would require 198 spaces. The International International Traffic Engineers Manual would require 156. And so we think it's a paper thing that we're trying to solve. But functionally and operationally, we think there is not a parking problem. When people go, as our parking study pointed out, there are vacant spaces and we don't fill up and bleed off into the surrounding community. There's another reference. I skipped it. So in the end, our request is for a variance to allow or recognize that the parking on lot 1, 158 spaces, is sufficient and has functioned for many, many years to accommodate the needs of Generation Medical. We've submitted a lot of evidence to the board that proves up that, hey, it's worked and functioned fine. And we believe that a variance is warranted in this case. We also have a gentleman's and continue to have a gentleman's agreement that you have in your packet with the Catholic Church and with the mosque, and we'd like those agreements to continue. We don't mind people parking on our property when we don't need it, and we would hope that they would continue to allow us to park on theirs when they don't need it. So we hope that we're able to get this resolved here this evening, move forward and put the past behind us, turn the page, and try to move forward in a positive relationship with the property owners. So with that, I would request your support and reserve some time at the end after the public hearing. Thank you.
Certainly. All right. Questions for our applicant? Board Member Tracy.
I have 2. Is this building a single tenant building or a multi-tenant building? And if it's multi-tenant, what is the occupancy percentage?
Multi-tenant, 100% occupied.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions?
I do have a question.
Board Member Collins.
I have a question. I'm looking at the drawing that shows the spaces. So if I have the numbers correct, the code recommends or requires 198 spaces. So I'm certain that there's a ratio of that 198 that have to be ADA. You currently have 6 spaces that are ADA. What is the ratio? If the city did require 198 spaces, how many ADA spaces would be required?
I don't have the answer to the ADA number of spaces, but I can go find that and come back at a later.
Because that would be a concern of mine, that if we gave a variance for 156 or 158, that the 6 spaces that I see on there would not have met the 198.
He says we have 6 ADA spaces. I don't know what the ratio is in the code that would require it to bring it up to the current standard, assuming the current standard has changed. I do know that the Doctors and the tenants in the building do instruct all of their staff to park furthest away from the building so that all the closer spaces are reserved for patients who are coming to the building.
All right, thank you.
All right, so let's come back to city staff for that question about ADA parking. Board Member Watson.
Yes, can you go back to your map, please?
I'm trying here. There we go.
Did I understand you to say that Lot 3 was originally owned by Moon Shadow?
No.
And so,
Lot 3 has never been owned by Moon Shadow.
Any other questions? Okay, Vice Chair Frazee.
So lot number 1 is Moon Shadow's. I guess a couple questions. So the 198 that is required by code, did the building ever have that requirement met?
We believe that when it was originally developed as one parcel together, that those 50 spaces over on lots 3 would help offset that. And when Moon Shadow acquired the property, they believed that there were agreements in place that addressed that so that there wasn't a parking problem. The court ultimately ruled that said, no, that's not what the agreement says. You don't have those 50 spaces or whatever 40 spaces that you need. And so because the court ruled that we didn't have what we thought we had, that's why we're here to get a variance.
Lot 3 used to be owned by the same as lot 1, and those 50 spaces surrounding the north and east of lot 3 used to be part of all of that.
Yes.
And then you'd reference that an agreement's been made with lot 2. How many spaces are they providing as far as overflow or shared parking?
We have an agreement with 2 that were up to 20 spaces. And that is included in our parking analysis that was submitted. That is 20 spaces within that 158.
That's part of the 158.
Correct.
Okay.
Board Member Confer.
When this was purchased and Moon Shadow purchased it when?
2006.
And when was the implementation of the city code that requires you to, Moon Shadow had to have 198 spaces?
Before that. So when we purchased the property and the lot split occurred, we believe that we complied with code with the sufficient number of parking spaces because the building permits were issued. We believe we had agreements in place that addressed that. However, court told us, no, you didn't. And so you're shy those spaces, and that's what led us here to option 2 to resolve this.
Thank you.
All right, we will thank you then.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Kaminsky.
Thank you, Chairman Lyon, Board. My name is Diana Kaminsky. I'm a senior planner at the City of Tempe Planning Division. We have a PowerPoint coming up. As you know, the request before you is for a variance. And I would like to explain a little bit about. Perfect. That'll slow me down because I tend to talk fast. Okay. So before you is not that one. Okay. The request for the variance is to reduce the required number of parking on this lot from the code required 198 to what is currently provided on the site of 158. And this occurred in pieces, and some of that is in the history of the report. As you see here, the lot 1, so can I use the pointer or no? Does the pointer work? Is that not at all? Okay. Lot 1 used to be larger. Lot 1 was lot 1 and 3 as one parcel. That is what came to the city through our entitlement process and building code and was developed with the building that you see that's on lot 1, with the vacant pad that was on lot 1. And all of the parking surrounding that vacant pad was part of the 198 for lot 1. Later, lot 1 was subdivided and lot 3 was created. And the parking that was on lot 3 was still assumed to be part of Lot 1 because that's the way it had been developed, and that's the way the city recognized it. When the plat occurred, there should have been a recorded cross-access and shared parking agreement to codify that, and that is what didn't happen. There was a draft that was never signed and recorded back at that time. Subsequent to that, Lot 1 sold, later Lot 3 sold, and that's where we are today. The property is zoned PCC1, that's Planned Commercial Center 1, and it's located on the northeast corner of McClintock and Guadalupe. So the request is to reduce the required parking on the site. It's not to reduce parking spaces, but just to reduce the required number as mentioned by the applicant on paper to meet the code through the variance process. In looking at the criteria for this, the special circumstances applicable, the lot is 2.796 acres. It is irregularly shaped. In this case, the criteria is an or, not an and, so it does not need to apply to all of the words described in that italicized criteria. So it is irregularly shaped, and the surroundings are unique in that it has frontage on 2 streets, but it also has these other uses adjacent to it that have a relationship for mutual benefit in some cases, and in other cases, Lot 1 is the largest burden of taking and granting parking rights to the adjacent properties, and that is a unique condition of this site. The strict application of the code would deprive the property of privileges enjoyed by other properties. In this case, there is a little difficulty in the strictest application of this criteria in that we would be looking at the same zoning and the same use per that italicized criteria. The church is not the same use and it is not the same zoning. However, they did receive the benefit of a variance very similar in terms of quantity, 26%. In this case, they're asking for 20%. So there is a similarity in terms of the privileges enjoyed by adjacent properties and how they use the property. Lot 1 is deprived of properties of the privileges because a lot of the agreements they have are not necessarily reciprocal. The agreement with the Catholic Church to the north is a reciprocal agreement, so there are a significant number of spaces available to them. However, it is a revocable agreement. It is recorded, but what it means is that at any time, if either party disagree, it can be revoked. In the case of the lot to the south, Lot 2, that is not reciprocal in that Lot 2 has the right to park on Lot 1, but it is not shared to Lot 1 parking on Lot 2. And the agreement with the mosque is not recorded, so it is a handshake agreement, and at any time, either property owner could say, you can't park on our property. The adjustment authorized shall not constitute a grant of special privileges inconsistent with the limitations upon other properties in the area. So I've gone over some of those privileges that are enjoyed by the adjacent properties, and when looking at how this property functions, the adjustment would bring Lot 1 back into compliance with the zoning code by reducing the number of parking spaces required by 20%, a ratio that is justified by the ITE and through the various studies that were analyzed through our report and the applicant's information. And it would provide equity between all the lots in the vicinity, not necessarily in the same zone. The variance is not to be granted if the special circumstances were imposed by the property owner. In this case, the parking lot originally approved by the city of Tempe and built by the first owner met the requirements of the code. The subdivision splits that occurred prior to the current owner had the requirement for parking that became off-site on Lot 3. The ownership changed in 2006. The current owner of Lot 1 utilized the parking on both Lots 1 and 3 from 2006 to 2019 in its current condition. The owner could not have anticipated a court ruling that would overturn the historic use of those parking spaces that were originally built to serve Lot 1. This recent change was not self-imposed by the current owner, and it creates a non-conforming condition on Lot 1. May 21st, there was a neighborhood meeting. I did attend this. There were 3 residents and a representative from the mosque in attendance. The first question that came up is what's being built on the vacant lot? We had to clear up that that was not a part of this request for the variance. They stated there were no parking issues with the medical center. For the residents that lived adjacent to and within the nearby area, most of the issues arise during holidays, obviously when the different religious organizations are using the different lots because there's overflow parking needs. There were also questions about maintenance of the landscaping, and some of that has to do with the fact that we have an irregularly shaped lot with only a little portion of it on Libra, and then there's ownership adjacent to that, and who's the one that's in control of the landscaping and maintaining that, with some issues that they had questions on there. So with the public input that I've received, there was a letter of support received from the architect who originally converted the bank building to the mosque. And that was provided to staff yesterday and to you in the study session today. Lot 2 has a private recorded non-reciprocal agreement that allows parking on Lot 1, and the representatives of both lots have come to an agreement. There's no opposition from Lot 2. There has been opposition received from representatives of the mosque to the north. They are also the owners of the Lot 3 to the east, and they have an informal non-reciprocal agreement to park on Lot 1. The opposition questions the validity of the variance and the alleged self-imposed conditions, and you did receive information regarding that opposition letter that you received this evening. Staff received that this afternoon. So staff's recommendation based on the information that was provided is that there is justification in support of the variance. Should the board concur with these findings and approve the variance, the applicant has agreed to conform with the following conditions. This variance is for Lot 1, Generations Medical Center, specific to the square footage of the existing building and the parking as it is currently configured. It is not recognizing the private agreements because those agreements have nothing to do with code required parking. All of these handshake and recorded documented agreements, all of those other sites are meeting the code requirements. Any intensification, obviously, of the use or the building. So if the tenants were to change, although a medical office is a higher intensity use than a general office, if they were to intensify any of those suites into something that changed the parking ratio, that would also trigger requirements to reevaluate their parking. Any new shared parking agreement, if they continue to work out deals with their neighbors, that's great, but if it is anything that affects the existing parking on site per this variance, then it would need to come back to us with that. And that's what the request is here with the conditions of approval. And I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Okay, board members. Vice Chair Frazee.
Well, I guess it appears that the parking issue is caused when Lot 3 was sold without a reciprocal access agreement for parking to Lot 1. And I had a couple questions. So the staff made their observations of the parking. Was that all hours during the times when the mosque was in, when the office building was in? Is there?
I made a few visits, and I believe Ryan did also. We tried to go morning, afternoon, and late afternoon during the times where there might be peak traffic to the site. I don't know that, I don't believe I went on a day where there was a mosque service going on at that time, but the study that was done by the applicant provided a much more detailed analysis where they actually counted cars over a longer period of time. So mine was kind of a drive-through, count the cars in the morning, go back later in the afternoon, do the same thing. And then I also did evaluate the historical aerials from 2004 to 2019 to just get a sense of over time what the average number of spaces were. It was pretty clear when there was 0 to 4 cars, there were 4 people working on a Saturday. Obviously, there wasn't a lot of activity when the satellite flew over that day. But I didn't see any issues on any of the days that I evaluated.
Board Member Tracy.
I'm not sure if this is a good question for you or Mr. Lake, but I'm taking a look at the reciprocal access parking and drainage easement that's included in our packet that is a recorded document. Did the court find that I mean, obviously it looks like it was recorded. Was it not enforceable? Was that what the court found, or what? I mean, because it doesn't look like it was just missed. It looks
That's a different document.
That's a different document. Okay.
Yes, so it has drainage and cross access and parking, and they're different parts.
Okay.
So the parking, that had to do with lots 1 and 2.
Okay.
not lot 3.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Frazee.
So is this a common area? I mean, is there a common area maintenance agreements for lot 1, 2, 3 as part of like a commercial pad or a master plan?
No, each lot is responsible for maintenance. There is the shared access and cross drainage agreement that was just referenced. And so there are some things like that, but there's no CC&Rs. There's no common area between all of the different developments.
All right, I have a question for you if you'll indulge. I believe it was Board Member Collins raised the issue of the ADA parking. Can you give us a feel for how many ADA spots would be required out of 198?
Sure. It's based on a sliding scale ratio. So at 198 space, 151 to 200 spaces requires 6. So the number of spaces would not go down for the accessible spaces. And in fact, you'd have the same number as you do today.
So it's based on what's provided, not what's required by code, but how many spaces you're providing on site.
But either way,
Fair
it would
point.
comply.
It would meet
so
it,
it's like,
yeah. That's helpful.
Okay. Other questions for staff? All right, we will thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so let's move on to the public comment section, and let's lay down some ground rules. I see there are a lot of interested folks here, and I think that's good. The way we like to do it is everyone gets 3 minutes. Please do not talk over, applaud, or boo anyone. We don't want any kind of intimidation factor here. This is a free exchange of ideas. So if you wish to speak, you may do so. If you can get one of these cards to me, if they're over on that table. If you want to fill one out and get them to staff, we can accommodate you. So far, I have 4 cards, one of which is Thomas Galvin. And okay, you're my first card. It says you're representing the applicant, but, oh, sorry, opponent. Sorry, my bad eyes. Okay, so yes, if you'd come to the podium, we can grant you those 3 minutes.
My apologies for the bad handwriting. And we have a presentation tonight as well. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Thomas Galvin, Rose Law Group, 7144 East Stetson Drive, on behalf of...
Can you speak up, please?
Sure. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Thomas Galvin, Rose Law Group, 7144 East Stetson Drive, on behalf of the opposition, which is the Masjid Omar ibn al-Khattab. We are here tonight because there was a lawsuit last year. And I know tonight there's been references to a court ruling or unanticipated decisions by a court, but that was a lawsuit. And I know that word hasn't been used in the presentations tonight or in the staff report. Also, I want to really go in depth through the 4 items that are necessary to get approval for a variance in the city of Tempe. And I think we've been kind of glossing over those items tonight. I'm going to show you how the applicant has failed of all 4 criteria. In addition, the site doesn't have 158 spaces. In the packet and the information we provided to you, the title report says it has 109 spaces. There are various revocable agreements that are applying to the property. The applicant can take care of these issues by either building more parking structures, entering into a parking lease agreement with my client, or possibly changing the uses because it's a very intense use. It's a medical office building. It is not an office building.
Mr. Galvin, I want to interrupt for just a moment. You are aware, I've paused it, but you have about 2 minutes remaining.
That's perfect.
All right.
Okay, I know there's
As
a
long
lot
as
to
you're
unpack,
aware.
and I know my time is
Now you're
limited.
starting a presentation.
So I don't have a clicker, but if we can go to each slide, please. Next one, please. And so you know the 4 criteria here, so we can go to the next slide. So the special circumstances are applicable to the property. There are no special circumstances that apply here. This is a lot that is not irregularly shaped. There are many properties, if we can look in the next slide, that are similarly shaped to the one you see tonight. And in fact, in terms of size, it's 121,000 square feet. We found other properties nearby that are over 100,000 square feet. And there are multiple frontage locations for the site on McClintock, on Guadalupe, and Libra to the north. I don't think that the way that the property is situated or the way that the property is sized is a special circumstance, nor do I think the surroundings are a special circumstance. Having 2 houses of worship is not really a problem. It's actually a benefit because houses of worship for the mosque are only occupied on Fridays and for the church usually on Sundays. Maybe a couple other times there are holidays throughout the year, but in many ways the property itself benefits from having houses of worship so they can use their properties for parking. As you can see here in the lawsuit, let's go to the next one, please. The strict application of this code will deprive the property of privileges by the same classification, the same zoning district. Staff said tonight that yes, there's a church. The church is not the same use as a medical office building, and the zoning is not the same. So absolutely the failure here on the part of the applicant to satisfy the criteria of a variance of a similar use and a similar classification. Next slide, please. So the adjustment authorized shall not constitute a grant of special privileges inconsistent with limitations upon other properties. The other properties don't have any special privileges at all whatsoever. They just have reciprocal agreements and revocable agreements. The mosque tomorrow could revoke the parking agreement with the medical office facility. The church tomorrow could revoke the agreement with the medical office facility, and that would only leave them with 109 spots. Let's go on, please. One more, please. I just want to get to the fourth one. Number 4. One more, please. Yeah, a variance may not be granted if the special circumstances are applicable to the property or self-imposed. As you can see in the lawsuit, the owner of the property was made aware that there was no easement and there was no agreement with lot number 3 in 2011. There were emails that were documented, and the judge ruled in favor of the mosque. In 2015, once again, that issue came up in emails between the current owner of the property and the fact that there was no agreement for lot 3.
Okay, I'm going to cut you off there and start
Okay.
asking questions.
Okay.
How about that?
Yeah.
Okay. So I appreciate your presentation being thorough and well put together. That's always very helpful. I appreciate your being willing to try and do that in 3 minutes. We have to keep you to the same rules as everyone else.
I understand.
does. All right. So I'm going to ask the first question, which is why is your client in opposition to this variance?
So we have in our presentation tonight an excerpt from the title that shows that they're only entitled to 109 spaces. And a number of those spaces are, and that out of the 158, a number of these spaces are encumbered by parking easements to the benefits of other owners. So this would create problems for the mosque. If it turns out that there's only 109 spaces after the revocation of all the other agreements, which can be revoked at any point, including tonight, the mosque is worried that any future development on lot number 3 and the mosque property itself would be encumbered by people going over and parking in those lots. There would be no guarantee that their rights would be protected. All the applicant has to do is either build a new parking structure or lease parking spaces from the mosque. And as you can see in the lawsuit, there were numerous discussions between the mosque and the current owner of the property, and he declined to pay to lease parking spaces. And that's the issue really here. They've offered to have a fair, equitable deal where there's consideration in exchange of a parking space for money, and the property owner just doesn't want to do it. And that's the problem where they're going for the variance.
Okay, what I don't understand, though, is if this variance is granted, that doesn't change the number of parking spaces or the business type or the actual traffic load on the site. So,
well,
I
if the medical office is a very successful office, it could expand in operations. There's no guarantee that there's a limit of how many cars are coming to the medical office. So there's always a potential that there could be more traffic, there could be more cars, there could be more people parking there.
Again, granting the variance doesn't change that.
But the potential for people now parking on the mosque's 2 lots will now be there without any agreement. So the potential is that the mosque could be violated, their property rights could be violated, and the property owner itself hasn't really satisfied any of the 4 criteria.
You say there's no way to defend that.
Board Member
lot,
Tracy.
Yeah, sorry. You say there's no way to defend Lot 3's property rights. Well, could you not enforce parking through a towing company and tow people if people are parked there?
Yes, but then now makes it incumbent upon the mosque to find a towing company to monitor all those things. They were sued last year for what was by what the plaintiff asserted was an easement by implication, and the court ruled that they never had that right. So tonight in their presentation, they said, oh, we thought we had this, we thought we had that. They never had it. The judge did not create that problem. That right or that lack of a right always existed. So they decided to sue instead of basically ameliorating or fixing the problems with their own property.
Okay, other questions for Mr. Galvin? We will thank you. Did you have a question?
Well, yeah, I guess.
Vice Chair Frazee.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, so although the mosque is in opposition to the granting of the variance, they would not oppose the granting of the variance if the medical office agreed and a payment system for the additional spots.
I don't think those items are related. You can have an agreement to lease the spots and still be subject to the current code requirement of 198 spaces.
But that's not part of the opposition, though. They were not.
There's no lease agreement in place, so that they are opposed to the variance out of concern for the potential impacts to their properties.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I apologize if I mispronounced your name, and I'll thank you to correct me at the podium. I have Mohammed Zubair.
I had a hard time hearing you, so I hope you can hear me very well.
Yes.
First of all, I'd like to congratulate you and thank you for being a member of commission. I myself served 8 years on Human Relations Commission in City of Tempe, and for last 15 years, someone from my home has served it. Now my daughter is serving on Mayor Youth Advisory Commission, so I thank you for being here at this time to hear this issue. So yes, I represent the mosque. I have been the founding member of the mosque.
Sorry, could you please state your name just for the record?
Mohammed Zubair.
Thank you.
I've been founding. So number one, there are a couple of things said here that I'd like to correct it. Nobody from mosques testified during trial. Okay. Number two, the attorney that came, what staff mentioned, was a trial attorney, had no knowledge of variance. Mosque hired the variance attorneys to represent the mosque. And number three, please note, there is an easement, private easement existing between three parties. That's a lot 2 to the south, and the little strip of the portion of lot 1. There's a little strip back there that staff mentioned was divided, and the lot that mosque owns. Those three portions are subject to this private agreement, so-called drainage, etc. It's a very simple words, but there's a lot in that agreement, okay? So, and that's what the attorney was mentioning, that when our neighbor, respected neighbor, took a title, it is written in their title that this is Alta Survey. That Alta Survey certified 109 parking. It did not certify remaining 48 parking, because those 48 parking are on that piece of land that we three are owners now. The Moonshadow, the applicant, mosque, and the property to the south. Property to the south was opposing. They wrote a letter. They were essentially saying same thing, but they did not oppose today. They backed out because they knew the mosque is already opposing. They didn't want to spend money on it. So that portion is a subject to this easement. There is a overriding letter from city manager describing that easement, private easement, and inviting mosque to come and develop the property. That letter is one of these packets. You can see it someplace. My question to you is only one, because I know there's 3 minutes time. If you give those 48 parking today to Moonshadow to use for the medical center variance, please ask question, where do they drain? Where is the drainage for that 48 parking? That drainage is on mosque property, on tunnels. If you grant this variance, people will park there, all that drainage, all that oil will come to the mosque. And who will clean that? That will be the property to the south. Will clean it. So staff, there's something called code required parking. I'm sure there's something called code required drainage. Nobody has looked into it.
Mr. Zubair, can you wrap it up, please?
Yes. So I thank you, and I ask you for your due diligence and a fair assessment. Thank you very much. And by the way, mosque has offered in 2015 to rent the parking to Moon Shadow. They said we don't want to pay it. Instead, they sued the mosque. For last 3 years, mosque has been sued as a community. So it has been very, very difficult for my community. We have cut down the program for our little children. 3 top-notch attorneys have been working against the mosque. So just ask you as a citizen, yes, Tempe welcomes all kind of business, but we do not guarantee the profits of a very, very high margin. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, I have, I think this says Steve Lannerson.
Good evening. My name's Steve Lennerson. I'm representing 3 hats tonight. I'm a physician, first of all. And just so that you know, Generations is named Generations because in the medical building is obstetricians. I've delivered 35,000 kids in 37 years. Many of them live in Tempe. I take care of many of the people here. They're my friends. Mohammed is my friend. We have pediatricians and we have internal medicine doctors who take care of our elderly. And so we joke that we do from womb to tomb. And we went together to serve the community. We took this building and we developed something we were very proud of. My second hat has caused all this problem. I'm a developer. Did I say I was a physician? So in conjunction with another physician that was a developer, we bought this property and we bought 1 and 3 together. So they were together. There were 198 spots. And then the partnership in 2006 sold the front portion. We developed the back portion under the guide of the city. And we were going to put actually a building there for daycare because we wanted all of our workers to be close to our kids, and we were going to do that. The partnership broke up, and Mohammed and I, early on when we moved in, we were very good friends. I would meet him halfway. We would talk. They were very respectful of us. We are. And we would park, and I would monitor, and he would monitor, and we would meet, and everything's fine. Everything's fine. But I guess in my short-sightedness, I don't understand development and the Lot 3, but we had an agreement, and it's worked. The fourth hat I wore and do wear today is property manager with my son. And so our basis as physicians is patients first and our neighbors first. So with regards to your ADA, most of these kids come in, they'll come in the big wide cars and that, or the elderly will come in. So we have escape driveway. So they deliver them there and then they park. So it's not that they need, we have the spots, but then they don't need the wider spots there. So as a property manager, I've been very intense about watching the property through the years because I knew this was and these guys are very respectful. On Friday when they're there, he's out there, oh, come on, you can park here. And it's working practically. So why are we here tonight? Unfortunately, I'm not an attorney, and there's been bad feelings developed over this lawsuit because the owner of our building rightfully wants to have an unencumbered building. You have to have adequate parking if you ever want to sell the building or develop it. So that's what happened there. But I can assure you, I sit out in the parking lot now. I'm retired. I don't deliver babies anymore. And so that's what I do. And there's adequate parking. It's working. It will work in the future. I please ask you to grant this variance. I will work with him. It will work. If there's drainage in your lot, I'll help you with that, however we can work together, but we've got to all work together in the future. The acrimony needs to go away.
Okay, thank you. Daryl Steele.
Hi, my name's Daryl Steele. Mr. Collins actually hit on my first thought. The actual requirements for ADA parking, I actually have a disabled parking permit. I've got problems with my back. For medical facilities is based off the performance of what is done inside those medical facilities. If they perform outpatient procedures like obstetrics that he just said he did, they're actually required to have 20% of parking as handicapped. So they would need to have roughly 40 handicap parking spaces are 38 based off what they're performing inside the building. If they do things like orthopedic work or work with people in physical therapy, crutches, stuff like that, they're required to have 20%. So it's actually basic parking would be 6 spaces, like they said earlier, but for a medical facility, it can be up to 20%. So by granting this variance, you would greatly reduce the amount of ADA requirements, which they are currently not meeting. And if we pull back up that picture that they had of the overhead view, it looks like the 40 or so parking spaces just south of the ADA parking that they currently have are covered parking for doctors. So the statement that they force their staff to park far away from the building in order to provide close locations for their patients seems to be really not shown in how they've structured their parking. Personal opinion.
Okay. All right, and I have one more card here for, I think this says Morris Hania.
My name is Morris Hania. I live right by the mosque, and I'm also a member of the mosque. And I think the city should stick to the codes. I witnessed 2 cases here. I got here at 6 thinking the agenda will be first, but I guess we were pushed to last. I'm opposing to this because throughout the 20 years I've been a member of this community, I've had problems with the medical office trying to share a parking lot. Apparently, from what I understood tonight, that this whole issue with the parking became a problem when Lot 3 was sold, which caused the problem. And I think one of the respected members here addressed it. So I'm really asking the city to stick to the code. The first gentleman that spoke has really misrepresented the fact there is a problem in the parking. We as members, when we have to come worship only on a Friday, we have to park so far away because every time we park close to where we worship, the medical office complains. And every weekend, as a matter of fact, there was a while when we stopped going to worship in that place, which was right next to my house, because of the parking issue, and it's limited. They have said we've had no issues. Yes, we had no issues because we only utilize the parking on Fridays and for 1 hour, maximum hour and 15 minutes, where the medical office is open every day from morning to 5, and their parking is packed. I do second the suggestion of to build a parking structure to solve this problem so we don't have a drainage issue, and we can also build whatever we want on the lot that we bought, lot 3. So apparently the building is not accurately shaped. They can have the parking by building a building structure. They need to fork out the dough. Apparently some physicians, in my opinion, got together to put a medical building, and then it became developers and partners, and they subdivided and they sold it to profit more money when the market went up, without considering that there is parking issues or anything like that. As a matter of fact, the parking issue was a problem because they sued the mosque and caused the mosque to pay a lot of money to defend themselves for something they weren't even guilty of. And at the end of the day, the judge ruled that they don't even have rights to those parkings. So in my opinion, that this motion and this variance should be denied. And it's about time for those physicians, investors, developers to build a parking structure to solve the problem permanently. They have taken a very sweet ride for a long time by utilizing the masjid parking and the church parking without an agreement, without a lease, without having to do anything. As a matter of fact, they made the parking problem a bigger problem when they sold lot 3 to profit from the real estate sale. And I think it's about time to do something. One last note, which is they need to comply with the code, and the church only utilizes the parking, their own parking on Sundays. So they have a very good deal. They should also sign a lease with the church to solve this problem.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so let's invite our applicant back up. Where are you? There we go.
I'm going to lean over here. Chairman, board members, I appreciate the opportunity to get up and just tighten up or sharpen a few points here. I have in front of me the two written agreements with the mosque and the Catholic Church for shared parking. These have been in place since 2002 and 2004. They are revocable, but they've worked and they've functioned for a long time, just in case there's that rare instance. And quite honestly, we think the instances are on those special religious holidays. We're okay with that. We want those agreements to continue because when the church either need those parkings when we're not there, that's great. We want them to be able to park there. There is a written agreement. There was a reference to 109 versus 158 parking spaces. I think you have in your packet the ALTA survey that outlines the number of spaces on Lot 1 on our property. So there are 158 parking spaces on my client's property. Let me clarify, and I don't know if this was a confusion. By making this application here today, or if the board does grant this variance, we are not taking away parking spaces. We're not adding parking spaces. Nothing will change out there. The day-to-day operations as people come and go and the amount of parking that is available doesn't change at all based upon this. Really what it does is it's a paper type of a situation that allows my client to either refinance the property or to sell the property to address the paper code requirement. But we're not adding or taking away. And lastly, by approving this variance, it is not impacting the ability of the mosque to develop the vacant lot. The mosque has been told by the city that they have to self-park their own when they develop. They have 50 spaces on that property that they can use to address that need, and nothing that this board does today will change that. And so we don't think it has any detrimental impact on that property. We understand that there's other options to pay the mosque money. We have offered them earlier, prior to the lawsuit, money to settle this, but I think that's what led to the lawsuit. So taking us back to where we were in 2005 to say, go give some money to them to solve it that way, I think takes us backwards to where we were in 2015. And again, on Friday afternoons and weekends, we have no problem with anybody parking on the property. So we would urge your support, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, board members, last chance at questions. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So,
we have questions of staff again? Or what's the plan?
I'm fine with that. Vice Chair Frazee?
Just, well, a couple questions in regards to the variance itself. You know, in regards to the strict application of the code in regards to other zoning classifications and zoning districts, the reference is always to the Catholic Church to the north. They were provided a zoning, but it's not in the same use or it's not in the same zoning code. Is that the only reference that's available, or are there other references that are available that would be similar to this property?
We didn't do any evaluation further than the immediate area. So I was looking at similar circumstances, and this was a variance that was in a nearby area, so that's why we looked at that one. And again, it refers to the strict application, but you know, the application of the criteria can be interpreted in different ways. And if you look at the fact that there was a variance granted and the percentage of the variance requested and the circumstances around it, there would be room for interpretation of that criteria.
And also in the report, and you'd referenced earlier that, you know, the variance staff's position was to approve this based on the information provided at the time that you made that approval. Do you think anything's changed since staff's recommendation to approve?
No, I don't.
Okay. Thank you.
Board Member Confer.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman. So the staff recommendation is to approve this variance?
Yes.
Okay. I'm having trouble interpreting a little bit of the reasons for approval, so maybe you can help me understand. Second sentence of the reasons for approval states, this request meets most of the required criteria. I'm concerned about the meets most of the criteria. Are you talking about the liberal interpretation?
Correct. If you take it in the strictest interpretation versus a more generous or liberal interpretation of the criteria.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So, opinions. Let's have them. Board Member Tracy.
I think I have several. So I think that, the fact that this building is 100% occupied and there doesn't appear to be a problem during the normal operating of this business, it sounds like the only issues I'm hearing are potentially on religious holidays, when it's actually the religious buildings that are creating the parking need that may be creating conflict, and really not the medical office building that's creating this conflict here today. I think the applicant has done multiple studies to prove out this parking demand, and I really just I can't see any undue hardship or any lack of ability for the mosque to enforce its property rights on this parking if it wanted to. So I mean, I just I lean towards approving the variance because I just I don't see an issue that the medical office building is creating here.
Okay. Other opinions? Board Member Watson.
So in reviewing the test, it does not meet the fourth test. In my opinion, it is self-imposed. They did not do the research according to what the attorney said, or the original developer was part of splitting off that lot and presumed that that was okay. So presumptions are self-imposed hardships. It's due diligence.
Okay. Other thoughts? I'll jump in a moment here. You guys are very quiet tonight. All right, fine. So let me first weigh in on a couple of things that we heard last from our applicant. Let me back up. Folks, thanks for coming. I love seeing people who are really invested and interested. That's good news to me. That means you care about your city, you care about what's yours, you care about your community. That's great. Thank you for being here. Thanks for being patient. I apologize to Mr. Hania. We did make an announcement that this case would be heard last, and I apologize that you missed that, but thanks for sticking around. To clarify a couple of things, whether we grant this variance or deny this variance tonight will in no way change the parking on lots 2 or 3. It will not change the parking on lot 1. The number of spaces will remain unchanged regardless of what we do tonight. The number of cars that come to this site will remain unchanged. At least it won't change because of anything we say tonight. The use on this site will not change because we say, right? This is the only thing this would change is a number that is written in a book. And that number is, how many parking spaces do we wish you had? That's the only thing that will be affected. So in my view, this will not affect anyone's property rights. You will have full development rights. You will keep your parking. There will be no additional cars. What we're here to decide is, are we okay that they have the amount of parking they do? Do we think that's okay for them to continue operating with that number of parking spaces? So I'll say, for my opinion, I think that they are okay. I also sit on the Development Review Commission. We hear many cases where applicants say, hey, we want to build this building and we don't want to build as much parking as you want. And at first you sort of say, well, yeah, but it says here you need a lot more parking than this. And they say, yeah, but this is a business. If we don't have enough parking, we're the ones that suffer because the customers can't come there. Sometimes we grant under those circumstances that, okay, if you don't have enough parking, then you're going to be out of luck. This is a little different than that. But what these people have said is this business has been in operation for many years, and no one's complaining about the number of parking spaces serving the building. The only people who are complaining is the city saying, hey, you don't match what it says in our book. Okay, so that's part one. Part two is with regard to the 4 tests. And I like that you referred to that, Board Member Watson. Those are the 4 criteria we're supposed to look at. Number 1, is there a special circumstance? Number 2, does it create a hardship? Number 3, would granting a variance create a special privilege? And number 4, was the special condition of the applicant's own making. So there's minor bit of contention on some of those points. I do think it's a special circumstance because this is a very weirdly shaped piece of property. It really is. I do believe that it does cause a problem for an existing building that operated for a long time and has sort of historically established that this is working. I don't think that it would be a special privilege to say, okay, you can go ahead and operate with less parking. That to me doesn't seem like a privilege, really. And then of their own making, that I can see your argument, Board Member Watson. And I don't have a very compelling logical argument other than I feel like I've been convinced that they had reasonable, it was reasonable for them to believe they were okay, that this property had been functioning in this fashion for many years, and to their understanding, they were still going to be okay on parking. So for that reason, I would support this variance. So, board members, what are the rest of your thoughts? Or if you don't want to share thoughts, we can have a motion. Board Member Tracy.
If I may add, with the use of transit and Uber, I see the need for parking decreasing over time. I actually have the benefit of working in an office building that contains medical uses. Many patients show up in taxis and Ubers, and so that further reduces the need for the on-site parking. And then the second thing that popped in my head was the fact that the mosque is willing to lease the parking, and if they didn't think they had enough, why would they be willing to lease it? And so I'm struggling with, if there is a problem, it sounds like the problem could be solved with money. So then is it just a money problem, or is it actually a parking problem?
If I could weigh in?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Board Member Tracy. I frankly think there's just a little confusion about how things are going to work with the variance. There's no change to the number of cars that are going to be showing up. If it's interesting, if our applicant were to lease parking spaces from the mosque, they would be giving money to the mosque for unused parking, because at least if what we've heard is true, they're not using more than the number they already have, so they'd be leasing parking from the mosque in order to satisfy our number in a book, but not to actually put cars in. And the other thing, too, is this issue of the parking garage. As an architect, I would say you really don't want a parking deck on this property. It's tiny. It would take all of that space, and it would be real close. And the hardship of watching that thing go up would be so disruptive. You would just hate it. It would take a long time to be very disruptive. You really don't want that unless that's your last resort. But anyway, sorry, that was a lengthy response.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I agree.
Other thoughts or motions? Or let me look to the left for once. I always look right first. I feel bad sometimes.
No, I have a motion, so if you have a question.
Board Member Confort?
And I'm not contemplating going towards the approval that's listed in the staff report. I don't understand the conditions of approval number 4 and 5. I don't know how the city jurisdictionally can insert themselves into private agreements for new parking agreements in the future. And I've never seen anything like that in any other staff report since I've been reviewing them. So it's new to me. I don't understand how the city can take that jurisdiction and say, if you have any private agreement out there, we need to see it first before it's recorded at the assessor's office.
Well, Ms. Kaminsky, would you respond?
In looking at the parking study that was provided and the analysis of the site, we recognize that the site functions with the spaces they have available. If they enter into private agreements that encumber that property, where they agree to allow another property owner the right to park on their property that takes away from those spaces beyond what the parking agreement or the parking analysis allows, then that is in effect taking away those spaces from the number that the parking study that they've submitted to us. So by asking for the variance, they're inserting the city into any future agreements that would encumber that property and further reduce the number of spaces. And they did agree to this. So it is a situation we have had on other properties with shared parking models. If tenants change in a multi-tenant building, the owner is responsible to come back to the city if they have a shared parking agreement. And we evaluate the new tenant mix to assure that the parking is still available for the tenant mix they have. So it is common practice when you get into parking issues like this.
Thank you for that explanation. But it doesn't include any of the existing agreements that are in place.
Because all of the existing lots, with the exception of lot 1 today, conform to our code. So if any of these other lots had a reduction in parking that took them below the code, then we would be a party to rectifying that difference, as we are with this site. So if any of these agreements in the past affected their code required parking, then we would have a concern. They're all agreements above and beyond what's required by code.
So when the city allowed this breakup in lot 3 to be sold, it was silent on this issue.
No, there was actually a requirement that they submit a recorded parking agreement as part of that plat process.
Am I understanding correctly that that process failed, though, that it wasn't recorded, that there was a draft?
There
and it
was a
just
draft.
wasn't-
There was a draft,
Right.
and the two property owners didn't sign it, and right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kaminsky. All right. Well, there's Board Member Watson.
Oh, one last comment. So there are 4 buildings there. And if we grant a variance for the first property, we can see this 3 more times. The mosque builds space, they need to encroach in some of their existing parking, and they can't render enough spaces that are required by code. They would then come in and want a variance as well.
Board Member Tracy.
May I respond to that? If they could then prove that they had adequate parking, we could then consider granting them a variance. And so, my support of this variance is because the applicant has proven that they can deal with 158 spaces appropriately. And so if the mosque could prove that, then we could give them a variance as well if we so chose.
Let's not start. I appreciate the passion, but we're not supposed to. Yeah, thank you. So I like that response. I would respond differently. I would say if we see future variances from the mosque or other developments, well, those are going to be clear-cut cases of self-imposed conditions, that they decided to develop something.
But there are special privileges that this variance would give that those would then be denied.
I don't see it that way. I can't bend your arm to see it my way. I can understand. I mean, there's a little squishiness in these terms. I don't see it as a special privilege. And I can't be more eloquent than that, unfortunately. So let's do this. Instead of staring at each other all night, let's take a motion, and if it fails, we'll do the other motion. Okay? So we could hear either motion first. It shouldn't really matter which we pose. Let's just pose one and see what happens.
Okay, my motion
Board Member Noggle.
is to approve the variance, reducing the required parking from 198 to 157 for Generations Medical Center.
Do I hear a second?
158.
We did hear 158. All right, Would you like to amend your variance to
I'm just reading
158?
that up there.
You can propose 157.
158, okay.
Okay, so it's 158 then. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right. Motion to approve variance down to 158 from Board Member Noggle and seconded by Board Member Tracy. All those in favor by show of hands, please. Opposed? Motion passes 5-2. Okay. Well argued. Well done. Thank you, everyone. All right, so that concludes our main pieces of business. Mr. Abramson?
If you would, Chair Lyon, please go over the appeals process with, thank you.
Okay, actually, will you take us through that, please? Folks, we do have one more announcement. If you could keep it down just a little. There is an appeals process, which Mr. Abramson's going to explain.
Thank you, Chairman Lyon. Should there be an aggrieved party of this decision tonight, you may appeal the decision within 30 calendar days to Maricopa County Superior Court. Thank you.
All right, do we have any announcements we wish to make?
Yes, actually, there was something we should have covered in the study session. You have this sheet in front of you. These are the scheduled dates of future meetings.
Vice Chair Tracy.
And they relate to the faith-based calendar that the city of Tempe goes by. Is there any concern with those dates? If so, we can work around those, potentially.
I see nothing.
I'm an alternate, so I'd have an issue with one, but it's no big deal.
Your opinion's very valuable. Thank you.
The 22nd is my girlfriend and mom's birthday of January.
Oh, we have to get.
22nd of April?
22nd of January.
Oh.
So you can give them the gift of watching you.
Yes.
And then,
if I spend 2.5 years here, I'll be in trouble.
Which one?
We have, at this point, one case potentially for the next meeting, which will be on Wednesday, November 20th.
Okay.
All right.
I lost mine, but so bad.
Ladies,
Second.
do I hear a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned.
Okay.
Thank you, ladies.